Chapter 45-65. To Chuanzang's surprise, even though Mo Cao's body was scratched, she was very agile. She rolled on the ground and immediately got up. Ignoring Chuanzang, she pounced towards the blood-stained clothes on the ground. My wife. The man also realized what happened. His face was filled with sorrow as he quickened his steps and followed behind Mo Cao. Chuanzang was very embarrassed. He took a deep breath and walked over. Benefactor, please listen to this poor monk's explanation. You. The man suddenly sped up and shouted, you killed my wife. You have to pay for my wife's death with your life. Oh no. Seeing the man's strange behavior, Jin Han was shocked. He quickly opened his mouth and was about to spit out a mouthful of sword qi. However, at this moment, Chunzong was standing in front of him. Moreover, the fisherman had already spat out black gas from his nostrils. A black light like a control insect appeared in the black gas. Jin Han's figure flashed. Just as she dodged Chunzong's attack, the sword qi in his mouth had already been spat out. At this moment, there was another thunderous sound. Kill! A rolling shadow of a staff swept past Chunzong's head. The powerful wave of qi not only pushed Chunzong to the ground, but even Jin Han's figure staggered a few times and almost fell down. Under such a powerful staff shadow, the control insect was already smashed into several pieces. As for the fisherman behind the control insect, he was not spared either. Where the staff shadow disappeared, his upper body was also smashed into meat paste. Ah! Father! Mo Cao had just pounced in front of her mother's corpse. Before she could smell the familiar scent on her mother's clothes, she heard another sound behind her. She naturally turned around and saw her father, being smashed into pieces by a magic staff. Although Little Grass was a strong girl, she was still young. She only cried out once before she fainted. Zhen Kong. Chuanzang stood up from the ground. His Pailu hat was already crooked. He did not care about his clothes and shouted, "What are you doing? Ah, you, why did you kill someone again?" Zhen Kong's figure appeared in midair. He looked at Chuanzang and his eyes flashed with golden light. He looked at the fainted Mo Cao and seemed to be thinking about something. Don't you dare. Chuanzang hurriedly stood in front of Mo Cao and said, if you kill someone again, kill me first. She doesn't have a control insect on her. Why would I kill her? Zhen Kong sneered and pointed at the control insect corpse on the ground with his magic staff. Take a look for yourself. Think about it. Didn't the black gas fly out of this person's nose? With that, Zhen Kong did not say anything else and he flew towards the fishing village. Although Zhen Kong didn't say what they were going to do, Jin Han understood that there was definitely something wrong with this fishing village, since control bugs kept appearing. So, Jin Han shouted, Jin, be on your guard. Don't let the monster. Yes. Without Xin Jie and Zhen Kong, Zhen Feng was very diligent. With a cry, he hurriedly poked his head out from under his butt and looked around. He even cried out, damn it, where did all the merit points from the Immortal Palace go? I must report them to Immortal Emperor Go Chen for being absent from work. Amitabha. Chuanzang's mouth was filled with bitterness. He squatted down and picked up Mo Cao's thin and weak body. He was really worried about how to explain himself after Mo Cao woke up. Master. Zhen Han said softly, these two control insects are really repulsive. The Pegasus only controlled the two adults and did not control the little girl. Second senior brother killed these two adults, and both of them were seen by this little girl. We have no way to explain ourselves. Why don't we kill the little girl as well? Forget it. Amitabha. Disgust appeared in Chuanzang's eyes. He glanced at Zhen Han and said, Zhen Han, you are now Ai's disciple and not a Confucian general. Don't break the precept. Chimpage. Zhen Han coldly snorted and didn't say anything else. She raised her hand and a cluster of flames appeared, burning the corpses of the fisherman and the woman on the ground, as well as the pancakes in the bamboo basket. Chuanzang opened his mouth and wanted to stop her. However, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. In less than 5 minutes, Zhen Kong flew out of the fishing village. Chuanzang hurriedly asked, Amitabha, Zhen Kong, don't commit any more crimes. Why would I be so fierce for no reason? Zhen Kong waved his hand impatiently and said, If there weren't any monsters, I wouldn't have bothered to make a move. With that, Zhen Kong gloomily muttered to himself, this is strange. If there aren't any monsters in the fishing village, why would two control insects appear out of nowhere? Zhen Han glanced at Zhen Kong and said indifferently, you killed people and didn't clean them up. Instead, you asked me to clean them up for you. Now that I've cleaned them up, you can explain to Mo Cow yourself. With that, Zhen Han looked at the fishing village in the distance. At this moment, some fishermen had already poked their heads out, but none of them had the courage to come out. Chumph, what's there to explain? Zhen Kong sneered. I only care about protecting Master. I don't care about anything else. If you want an explanation, go and do it yourselves. Mother, father. At this moment, Mo Cow woke up. She called out and sobbed softly. Her small figure shrank into Chuanzang's embrace as she avoided Zhen Kong with a fearful gaze. A little girl had her family destroyed in just one morning. No matter how mature she was, she couldn't accept it. She even thought that she was dreaming. Amitabha. Chuanzang looked at the unconcerned Zhen Kong and said, Master is hungry. Mo Cow is also hungry. Go and ask for some karma. Yes, Master. Zhen Kong didn't say anything else. He looked at the fishing village in the distance and urged the cloud to fly away. Fuck. Chuanzang looked at the sky in the distance. The sun was already high up in the sky. He took a deep breath. There was a hint of nostalgia and sadness in his voice as he said, when I was still a child, I also had a father and mother at home. They loved me very much. However, one day, when Zhong Qingxiao massacred Yellow Flower Ridge, Jiang Liuer was still young. Xiao Hua originally thought that Jiang Liuer might not know the truth. However, Jiang Liuer clearly knew what happened that day. Although he didn't know who Jiang Liuer learned the truth from, or if he saw it with his own eyes, he could hear from Chuanzang's mouth that Chuanzang's knowledge and the truth were somewhat different. However, Xiao Hua wasn't here. Only Mo Cow, Zhen Han, and Longma Zhenfeng were listening at the side. Zhen Han and Longma Zhenfeng wanted to know Chuanzang's background from Chuanzang. Mo Cow sympathized with Chuanzang's experience. No one knew how serious the difference was. When Zhen Kong slowly flew back with a bamboo basket in his hand, Mo Cow's eyes were still filled with sorrow and hatred. However, the tears in her eyes had already dried up. Children from poor families were always able to adapt to life very quickly. They knew what to do when and what to do. Her parents had already been killed. What she needed to do now was to protect herself and tenaciously survive. Zhen Kong placed the bamboo basket in front of Chuanzang. After hesitating for a moment, he said, Master, I got this from the town in front. Please take a look and see if it's of any use. Chuanzang nodded and didn't answer. He removed the lining cloth on the bamboo basket and saw that there were some date cakes and other things that looked very pretty. A burst of heat and fragrance floated from the bamboo basket. Chuanzang didn't feel anything, but Mo Cow's stomach rumbled. Chuanzang picked up a date cake and placed it next to Mo Cow's mouth. He said kindly, You eat. Master, eat first. Mo Cow raised his hand and pushed it to Chuanzang's mouth without hesitation. Master has been enlightening me for a long time. I'm sure you're already hungry. Okay. Chuanzang saw that Mo Cow was so sensible and felt a little guilty. He picked up another piece and gave it to Mo Cow. Let's eat together. At this moment, Chuanzang didn't look like a monk at all. He was no different from a kind big brother. Mo Cow grinned and forced a smile. Okay, Master. After Mo Cow wolfed down the date cake, Chuanzang slowly ate a few mouthfuls. Before Chuanzang could do anything, Zhen Kong flicked his finger and a jujube cake flew out of the basket and landed in Liao Cao's hand. Liao Cao was startled and its small body shrank back into Chuanzang's kasaya. Zhen Kong looked at Mo Cao's fearful eyes and said faintly, Master, Disciple has thought about it on the way here. Disciple has gone a little overboard today. However, Disciple was only trying to protect Master. The situation was urgent. Disciple doesn't know what you're thinking. However, since it has already happened, it's useless for Disciple to say anything. Master, do as you see fit. After saying that, Zhen Kong's figure flashed and landed on the hillside. He no longer paid attention to Chuanzang. Amitabha. Seeing that Zhen Kong was remorseful but his mouth was still unyielding, Chuanzang chanted Buddha's name. He couldn't eat the remaining date cake. Master, hurry up and eat. Chuanzang Kusama put down the date cake and hurriedly said, eat until you're full so that you can go on your way. You eat. Chuanzang placed the date cake back into the bamboo basket and forced a smile. When you're done eating, this monk will send you home. Oh right, who else is in your family? At the mention of family, Mo Cao's small mouth twitched again. Tears fell from his eyes and he sobbed as he replied, there's no one else in my family. Young benefactor, do you have any relatives in the village? Chuanzang felt bitter and asked again. However, before Mo Cao could reply, Zhen Kong, who was sitting on the hillside, suddenly jumped up from the ground. He waved the magic wand in his hand and hurriedly said, damn it, there's no end to this. You too, hurry up and protect Master. Zhen Han was also shocked. He hurriedly flew over from afar and waved the weapon in his hand. His eyes flashed as he looked in the direction where Zhen Kong was facing. Chapter 4566. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng was as lazy as before. However, he also turned around to look, wanting to know which shameless demon or Daoist cultivator had come to court death this time. However, when they saw the demon flying over from afar, they couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. This was because another identical Zhen Kong was carrying a peach tree on his shoulder and stepping on a demon cloud. He had a gloomy expression on his face as he flew back. The second Zhen Kong was clearly a little absent-minded and didn't release his origin will to investigate. Instead, the first Zhen Kong rushed into the sky and roared furiously, damned demon. You actually dared to transform into my appearance and come over. See if I don't kill you. Ah! Zhen Kong shuddered and looked in disbelief at the Zhen Kong who looked exactly like him standing in front of him. He hurriedly shouted, Master. When the second Zhen Kong saw that Chunzong was safe and sound, he threw the peach tree on the ground and roared furiously, damned demon, you actually dared to transform into my appearance and come over. See if I don't kill you. When the second Zhen Kong finished speaking, he was stunned. Not only were his words exactly the same as the first Zhen Kong, his tone was also exactly the same. Even he himself couldn't tell the difference. Demon, hit as usual. The first Zhen Kong roared and waved his magic wand at the second Zhen Kong. The second Zhen Kong was also furious. He roared and waved his magic wand, demon, hit as usual. Oh my, there are actually two second senior brothers. Dragon Horse Zhenfeng laughed and said, which monster race is this? Actually transforming into a fire ape. Is he really not afraid of death? Then, Dragon Horse Zhenfeng released his origin will and swept it across the two Zhen Kongs. Hehe, interesting. Zhen Han sneered. Which great sage wants to pluck the peaches this time? Did he get the approval of the Immortal Palace and the Thunder Monastery? Naturally, Zhen Han sneered and, like Dragon Horse Zhenfeng, used the clear eyes technique to look at the two Zhen Kongs. The dragon and the human were fine, but after looking at each other for a while, their expressions changed greatly. The two of them looked at each other with fear in their eyes. Neither of them dared to say another word. That was because the two Zhen Kongs fighting before him not only had the same magic wand and the same techniques, even their strength was exactly the same. In fact, the two Zhen Kongs couldn't even be distinguished by the clear vision light and origin sense. However, the dragon and man pondered for a moment and immediately understood that there was definitely something wrong with Zhen Kong, who had returned earlier. Because it was impossible for the previous Zhen Kong to give in, it was even more impossible for him to have come from the town to beg for alms. Only the Zhen Kong who came back later, the one who followed his temper and brought back from a peach tree in the mountains, could be the real Zhen Kong. But now, the two Zhen Kongs were fighting. Who knew which one was the Zhen Kong that returned first and which one was the Zhen Kong that came later? Moreover, when they thought about the control worm that appeared in the fishing village and the grass in Chunzong's arms, Zhen Han and the dragon horse Zhenfeng shuddered. The trap that they had set for Zhen Kong was definitely not small. A demon with such thoughts and the ability to transform into Zhen Kong's appearance was definitely not someone they could deal with. Moreover, the sutra seeking extreme bliss had already reached its end after 200 years of suffering. Which demon would dare to come over and blatantly pluck the peaches at this time? If they didn't have a powerful background, Zhenhan and the dragon horse Shenfeng wouldn't believe it even if they were beaten to death. Shrinking their necks, the dragon and man seemed to have felt a cold wind blowing on their bodies and felt somewhat cold. You too deserve to die. At this moment, one of the Zhen Kong shouted, "Why aren't you coming over to help me? Come over quickly." The other Zhen Kong also shouted, "This demon is troublesome. His strength is actually on par with me. If you don't come over to help, I won't be able to kill him." Hearing this, Zhenhan immediately jumped into the air and opened his mouth. Sword Qi was about to fly out, but the flying sword only flew out half a kai. Zhenhan was once again in a difficult position and said in a low voice, "Second senior brother, this little brother really wants to help you. But this little brother doesn't know which one is the real you." The dragon horse Shenfeng also jumped into the air and said in agreement, "That's right, that's right. This little brother doesn't know which one is the real one. How can I help you? If I help this demon kill second senior brother, wouldn't our sutra-seeking extreme bliss become a joke?" Saying this, the dragon horse Shenfeng turned his head and shouted, "Don't you think so, master?" Chunzong was naturally not stupid. The moment he saw the two Zhen Kongs, he immediately understood what was going on. However, he was currently the same as Zhenhan and the dragon horse Shenfeng, dumbfounded. Because he was unable to differentiate the two Zhen Kongs. Which one was the real Zhen Kong? "He is the fake Zhen Kong," one Zhen Kong shouted. He opened his mouth and spat out a flame. The other Zhen Kong also shouted, "You are the fake Zhen Kong." Saying this, he also spat out a flame. The strangest thing was that when the two flames collided, they were extinguished at the same time. "You dare to secretly learn this daddy's magic? See if this daddy doesn't beat you to death." One Zhen Kong shouted and raised his magic wand again, while the other Zhen Kong also shouted, "You dare to secretly learn this daddy's magic? See if this daddy doesn't beat you to death." The two Zhen Kongs fought in the air again. Seeing that they didn't need to help, Zhenhan and the dragon horse Shenfeng cleverly descended from the air. Zhenhan held the crescent moon spade and stood on one side of Chunzong while the dragon horse Shenfeng swung his tail and stood on the other side. They seemed to be rather loyal. The two Zhen Kongs fought from the sky to the ground, then from the ground to the sea, and then from the sea to the sky. Not only were the winds and clouds surging in the sky, even the calm surface of the sea was gradually surging with huge waves. The two Zhen Kongs were still unable to determine the victor. Seeing the scorching sun in the sky, the two Zhen Kongs knew that there wouldn't be any conclusion if they continued to fight like this. They both waved their magic wands and descended from the sky. However, the two Zhen Kongs seemed to have a tacit understanding and landed a bit far from Chunzong. The two Zhen Kongs stabbed their magic wands towards the ground and shouted, "Master, quickly tell us, which one is the fake Zhen Kong and which one is the real Zhen Kong?" Chunzong helplessly looked at the two identical Zhen Kongs and said, "Master's eyes are mortal, how can I tell them apart?" Saying this, Chunzong turned his head and asked Zhenhan and the dragon horse Shenfeng, "Disciples, which one do you think is the real Zhen Kong?" "Master, we really can't tell." Zhenhan and the dragon horse Shenfeng replied in unison, "Actually, Master can ask some secrets that only you and second senior brother know, damn it." Without waiting for Zhenhan and the dragon horse Shenfeng to finish speaking, the two Zhen Kongs cursed together, "Since it's a secret, how can Master ask it in person? If the fake Zhen Kong heard it, wouldn't he know? Ayo, that's right, Master, please don't ask." Zhenhan and the dragon horse Shenfeng realized and hurriedly said to Chunzong, "Let's wait for eldest senior brother to come back first." "Alright, it seems like we can only wait for Jinjie to come back first." Chunzong could only place his hopes on Jinjie, who was sleeping somewhere. However, they waited for more than half a day. Seeing that the sun was about to set, they still didn't see the shadow of that pig. Because of the fight between the two Zhen Kongs, the fishermen in the fishing village didn't dare to leave the village. Around the fishing village, there were some shelves made of withered branches. Most of them had fishing nets on them. These fishing nets were supposed to be put away last night, but because of the arrival of Chunzong and the others, as well as the battle between Zhenjie and the three demon kings, most of them weren't put away. At this moment, these shelves had collapsed due to the strong wind, and the fishing nets were scattered on the beach. Far away on the beach, there were some small boats. Originally, when the tide rose this morning, the fishermen in the fishing village would go out to sea as usual. However, because of the fight between the two Zhenkongs, the fishermen didn't go out to sea. When the tide rose, some fishing boats were dragged by the seawater and drifted into the sea. Together with the fishing nets from before, most of them were floating not far away from the beach. Although these fishing boats and fishing nets weren't far from the beach, when the tide fell, they would probably drift into the depths of the East Sea. The owners of these boats would lose their boats, and their livelihood would be even more difficult in the future. Looking at the two identical Zhenkongs staring at each other like fighting cocks, ready to fight at any time, Chunzong sighed and once again looked at the distant sea. A layer of darkness appeared in the depths of the sea. Chunzong, who had already passed through the East Sea 3 times, knew that a storm was coming. "Master," Xiao Cao said in a low voice, "there will be a storm tonight. If we don't put away the fishing boats now, they will turn into wood chips tomorrow morning." Amitabha. Chunzong sighed and said, "Even at this time, young benefactor is still thinking about others. You are really kind. Master." Dragon Horse Zhenfeng called from the side, "Let's find a place to hide from the rain. Who knows when eldest martial brother will come back this time? It's not the first time he went out to slack off. If the wind is calm, he might come back tomorrow. Now that there is a storm, he must be at the bottom of the sea somewhere." Chunzong pondered for a moment. What Dragon Horse Zhenfeng said was the truth. Zhenjie was loyal to Chunzong, but he was also very lazy. When they first came down from the snowy mountain, he was fine, lying on Dragon Horse Zhenfeng's back to sleep every day. Later, Zhenjie felt uncomfortable on Dragon Horse Zhenfeng's back, so he would find excuses to go out and fight demons from time to time. This fight would take at most 10 days, and at least a few days. However, at that time, Zhenkong was there, so Chunzong didn't feel that there was much difference. But now that Zhenkong was in trouble, Zhenjie went out to slack off. This small matter was a big deal. "Let's go." Chunzong stood up and said, "Let's go first. Don't block the fishermen's livelihood. If we don't go out to sea, I'm afraid that some families will be in trouble." "Yes, Master," the two Zhenkongs answered at the same time, very habitually. Damn it. The two Zhenkongs, who had just rested for a while, were furious again. With a loud shout, they started to fight again. Chapter 4567. Chunzong was helpless and could only say to Zhenhan, "Disciple, go and pick up the fishing boats and nets scattered in the sea. Don't let them drift with the waves." "Master." Zhenhan looked at the two Zhenkongs fighting and said nervously, "Right now, I still can't tell which one is real and which one is fake. Disciple has to protect your safety and can't leave without permission." "She." Longma Zhenfeng sneered, "It's obvious that the one who came back first is fake. If he wanted to harm Master, he would have made a move already. Why wait until now?" "H, I think the one who came back later is fake." Zhenhan snorted, "Zhenfeng, you are from the dragon race. Picking up fishing boats and nets from the sea is your specialty. You should be the one doing this." "Bah." Longma Zhenfeng spat, "I am the 10th prince of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. How can I do such a trivial thing? If the other princes of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace were to know about this, how can I still keep my face? You are already being ridden by a pig. What face do you still want?" Zhenhan retorted. However, he immediately looked at Chunzong, who was walking towards the sea, and shouted, "Master, what are you doing?" "Amitabha." "Master is going to do such a trivial thing," Chunzong said without turning his head back. "Ayo, Master, don't be anxious. Disciple was just joking with junior brother." How could Zhenhan dare to let Chunzong go to the sea? He hurriedly said and flew above the sea. He raised his hand and grabbed the fishing boats and nets several li away. With a wave of his hand, he was about to throw them to the beach. Chunzong saw this and hurriedly shouted, "Disciple, be careful. Don't break these fishing boats. You are really long-winded." Although Zhenhan was impatient, he still restrained his temper and flew to the beach and put down the fishing boats and nets. After one more grab, the entire surface of the sea was cleaned. Zhenhan's face was a little pale as she gasped for breath and said, "Master, Disciple was fortunate enough to not disappoint you." "Amazing. Third senior brother is really amazing. Longma Zhenfeng raised his hoof and praised with admiration. Gosh Chuanzang looked at the little girl and asked, "We should be on our way. This penniless monk will send you back to the fishing village." But Liao Cao blinked and said, "Master, if you send me back, I will starve to death. How is this possible?" Zhenhan sneered, "Although there are only 40 to 50 families in this small fishing village, there are still over 100 people. Wouldn't having a little girl like you mean having an extra pair of chopsticks? Besides, don't you know how to pick up seafood on the beach? Even if you were at home, would they just watch you starve to death?" Maro Cow opened her mouth but didn't know how to explain. After a while, she pointed in the direction of the fishing village and said, "Before the new year, there was a guy called Smelly Fish in our village. His parents went out to sea and didn't come back. He disappeared after that." Amitabha. Chuanjue chanted the name of Buddha. Zhua Cao's worries are not unfounded. These fishermen only relied on fishing for a living, and even a family of 3 might have problems filling their stomachs. How could they spare the energy to adopt a little girl? Not to mention Zhua Cao living alone. Who knows what kind of ancient people she would meet? In this era, people can only live for themselves. Conscience is about to disappear. This is also the reason why Master wants to bring the Mahayana Buddhist scriptures to the hidden immortal continent. So that under the illumination of Buddha's light, the world can become one. "Master, do as you wish," Zhenhan casually replied. "Zhenfeng." Chuanjue spoke again, "Come here." "Yes, Master," Zhenfeng replied. Just as he took 2 steps forward, he suddenly realized something and cried out in shock, "Monk, what are you doing?" "Amitabha, Zhua Cao is still a child. Master wants to take her away, so naturally I have to ride on your body," Chuanjue replied indifferently. Dragon Horse Zhenfeng quickly retreated and shouted, "How can this be? I am the 10th prince of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. How many people in this world can ride on my body? It is already good enough for me to become your disciple. You actually want a secular girl to ride on my body? You are humiliating me, humiliating my Eastern Sea Dragon Palace." "Master." Zhenhan also frowned and said, "If this Zhua Cao is a boy, then so be it. We can just bring her along. She is a girl. Although she is young, she is still a girl. I am afraid that it will be inconvenient to bring her along, right?" "That's right." Dragon Horse Zhenfeng retreated far away and shouted, "Monk, if you do this, you will make that Eastern Sea conch girl who is infatuated with you sad." "Amitabha," Chuanjue replied, "Master will bring Zhua Cao along first. When we reach the city, I will find an honest family or a nunnery and let her stay there." "Not good, not good," Zhenhan said anxiously. "How can there be an honest family in this world? If Master leaves, who knows how they will treat Zhua Cao? A nunnery is even worse. Zhua Cao is still so young. How can she become a nun?" "Amitabha, then I will leave this matter to you." Chuanjue smiled and said, "The hidden immortal continent is the foundation of Confucian cultivators. The immortal palace must have a place to settle the old, the young, the sick, and the disabled. Since Sutra seeking in extreme bliss has the merit of Confucian cultivators, then Zhua Cao should also be one of the merit." "Monk, you set a trap for me." Zhenhan was startled and became somewhat angry. Chuanjue was not angry and said indifferently, "Amitabha, if the immortal palace is selling dog meat under false pretenses, then you naturally don't have to do it." With that, Chuanjue pulled Zhua Cao's hand and said, "Zhua Cao, follow this poor monk." "Yes, Master." Zhua Cao was very obedient. She stood up and looked at the fishing boat not far away with reluctance. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end, she closed her mouth. Chuanjue was very attentive. After walking a few steps, he saw Zhua Cao's sad expression and woke up. He turned around and brought Zhua Cao to the fishing boat. "Master, what are you doing?" Dragon Horse Zhenfeng asked hurriedly. "Zhenfeng, you go and tidy up the scriptures. Carry the scriptures and other things on your body first." Chuanjue instructed, "Zhenhan, you go with Master to the fishing village and tidy up the things in Zhua Cao's house. After all, this is Zhua Cao's house. Don't let her grow up and forget the things in her house." "Thank you, Master." Zhuo Kao heard this and tears flowed down her cheeks. No. Zhenhan wanted to say that he didn't want to go, but seeing Chuanjue's firm steps, he knew that he couldn't stop him. He thought for a moment and said, Master, you wait here. Zhuo Kao, come with me. With that, Chuanjue raised his hand and took Zhuo Kao into his hand. He stepped on a cloud and impatiently flew to the sky above the fishing village. When Zhuo Kao pointed at the straw hut, Chuanjue waved his hand and put the entire straw hut into his Chenkuan bag. The fishermen in the fishing village were all afraid and hid in their houses, not daring to come out. Zhuo Kao saw Chuanjue's divine ability and her eyes lit up. She hurriedly shouted, Uncles, I am Zhuo Kao. My parents were killed by demons and unfortunately met with misfortune. I met a kind monk and they promised to take me to another place to settle down. You don't have to worry. When I grow up, I will come back to see you. Chuanjue was extremely impatient, but after hearing Zhuo Kao's words, he couldn't help but look at Zhuo Kao. After all, this child at such a young age was more meticulous than his age. It was indeed rare. However, Chuanjue didn't think too much about it. After flying back, he told Chuanjue. Chuanjue nodded with a smile. He held his staff in one hand and the little Zhuo Kao in the other. He looked at the direction, then looked at the two Zhenkongs who were still fighting in the sky and left. Who is the real one? Who dares to steal my merit? Longme Zhenfeng carried the scripture on his back and looked at the battle in confusion. However, after a moment, he shook his tail and sneered, What does this have to do with me? My merit won't be any less. After saying that, Longme Zhenfeng followed behind Chuanjue. However, after a moment, Longme Zhenfeng cursed, Damn it! Why aren't there 2 chastity rings? This scripture is as light as a feather compared to the chastity rings. Chimpage. Behind Longme Zhenfeng, Chuanjue's voice came again, Even if there are 2 chastity rings, won't you still have to carry whoever is killed? Longme Zhenfeng snorted and said with a smile, What if the fake one kills the real one and the fake one isn't lazy? Maybe he won't ride on my back and show off his prowess. You're dreaming. Chuanjue sneered, How can the fake kill the real one? Do you think that there are so many 8th grade peak elemental energy experts in this world who would come and join in the fun? That's right. Longme Zhenfeng was also interested and said in a low voice, Chuanjue, between the 2 Zhenkongs, which one is the real one and which one is the fake one? Nonsense, the one who came back first is the fake one, the one who came back later is the real one. Chuanjue replied without thinking. Longme Zhenfeng was displeased, You're the one who's talking nonsense. Can't you have a nice chat? The night is long and the stars are shining brightly. Don't you want to talk about the biggest secret of immortals, Buddhas, and demons? What's there to talk about? Chuanjue sneered, We're all chess pieces. Fate is never in the hands of chess pieces. No, you don't understand what I mean. Longme Zhenfeng laughed, What I mean is, between the 2 Zhenfengs, one is the real one and the other is the fake one. Or are both the real one and the fake one? Why did he appear at this time? Oh, Zhenfeng, what do you mean? Chuanjue's curiosity was piqued and she asked curiously, Quickly say it. We just came out from the Eastern Sea. Could it be that you got some news? Guesses are guesses. Third senior brother, you can't slander me. Longme Zhenfeng was somewhat displeased. Although I came from the Eastern Sea, I didn't see the dragon race from the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. I didn't even see a single marine race from the Dragon Palace. Eldest senior brother can testify to this. Chapter 4568. All right. Zhenhan smiled and said, Aren't we fellow disciples? I'm just joking with you, don't take it to heart. He, senior brother. Longme Zhenfeng chuckled and asked, I'm just joking. Think about it, Zhenkong wasn't originally in the sutra seeking extreme bliss. He was the monk's disciple. This disciple received a lot of merit, and the 2 of us talked about it before. But now, we still don't know where this fire ape came from. Do you think it's possible that some great sage of the 1000 beast sacred realm couldn't stand this fire ape and sent all the beast clans to kick him out of the sutra seeking extreme bliss? Of course. Zhenhan replied without hesitation, This is the most likely scenario. Moreover, Zhenhan glanced at Longme Zhenfeng and said meaningfully, Junior brother, Don't you think that the appearance of this fake Shen Kong has a lot to do with the East Sea Dragon Palace's peace? Hiss. Longma Zhenfeng couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air and said in shock, Senior brother, you mean? Since you've already guessed this possibility, why do you need me to say more? Zhenhan smiled and didn't say anything. Don't. Senior brother. Longma Zhenfeng thought of another possibility and couldn't help but feel bad. He quickly smiled and said, I'm just a bystander, so why don't you say it? Zhenhan rolled his eyes and said ambiguously, it's your beast clan's matter, why do you need me to say it? Although I don't know what happened in the East Sea Dragon Palace, you should be glad that there are 2 Zhen Kongs and not 2 Zhen Fengs. Ari, that's right, I didn't think about it at first, but now that senior brother said it, I know. Zhen Feng seemed to have some lingering fear in his heart as he replied, it's possible that the great sage of the Great Sage Hall went back on his word. Something happened between the Great Sage Hall and the East Sea Dragon Palace. Fortunately, the East Sea Dragon Palace didn't abandon me, the 10th prince. That's right. Zhenhan smiled and said, you're still the 10th prince of the East Sea Dragon Palace, unlike this fire ape who doesn't have any background. At this point, Zhenhan's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly transmitted his voice, that's not right. Zhenfeng, do you still remember the snowy mountain? Nonsense, who doesn't remember the Great Snow Mountain? Namo Metria Buddha achieved enlightenment and Zhenjie became our senior brother. Speaking of the Great Snow Mountain, Dragon Horse Zhen Feng immediately thought of its own bloody history and became somewhat angry. Do you think that Daoist Xiao is Zhen Kong's backer? Zhen Han reminded. I remember that Daoist Xiao treated Zhen Kong quite well back then. Are you kidding me? His Zhen Jie's backer. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng said disapprovingly. That day, that human didn't say anything to Zhen Kong, and he even cursed at him a lot. The funniest thing is that the fire ape didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and wanted to ask that human for a magic treasure. Wasn't it rejected by the human? That's true. Zhenhan nodded and said, if Daoist Xiao has a backer, it's not a big deal to give him a magic treasure. Moreover, Daoist Master Xiao rejected him very tactfully. With one look, I can tell that he is not on the same side as Zhen Kong. You humans are really laughable. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng mocked, a rejection is a rejection. Why did you say when you are done with the sutra seeking extreme bliss, come and ask me for it and I will keep it for you? That's too fake. Hehe, why else would I be a human? There are a lot of ways of the world that you monsters don't understand. Zhen Han replied with a mischievous smile. I am a dragon, the 10th prince of the East Sea Dragon Palace, not a monster. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng corrected again. These words, he had probably said it more than 2,000 times in the 200 years he had spent in the sutra seeking extreme bliss. Zhenhan didn't mind. He raised his head and looked at the 2 Zhen Kongs in the distant night sky and said with a smile, in my opinion, this fake Zhen Kong was sent by the Great Sage Palace to kill Zhen Kong and seize his merit. That's not right. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng was about to nod, but he suddenly thought of something and said in confusion, if this is the work of the Great Sage Palace, why didn't they lure Zhen Kong to a secret place and kill him before letting the fake Zhen Kong come back? That's right, that's true. Zhen Han also didn't understand, but then he asked curiously, if that's not the case, then how do you explain those 3 monsters with 8th grade essence energy? Weren't they sent by the Great Sage Palace to lure the tiger away from the mountain? It's getting more and more complicated. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng kicked his front hooves and said, if it isn't the Great Sage Palace, then could it be the Immortal Palace? How could it be the Immortal Palace? Zhen Han didn't understand what Dragon Horse Zhen Feng was thinking. Look, nothing happened at the Sutra world, but when we arrived at the hidden Immortal Continent, before we even set foot on the ground, the 3 monster kings came. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng said with a smile, then eldest senior brother disappeared. The control insect came and the real Zhen Kong was discovered. And the merit officer who should have appeared, has yet to appear. Do you think the Immortal Palace did this on purpose? Hee. Zhen Han smiled and said, even if my Immortal Palace wanted to do something, we would definitely not use a monster as an excuse. Not to mention, using such despicable methods. There are 3 reasons why there are no merit officers of the Immortal Palace. Oh, there are actually 3 reasons. Third senior brother, let's hear it. Dragon Horse Zhenfeng said with interest. First of all, this sutra seeking in Sutra World is a Buddhist sutra. It has nothing to do with my immortal palace and Confucian cultivators. Why would the merit officers of my immortal palace care about it? Tell me, then what? Then, since eldest senior brother came from the Great Snow Mountain, those so-called tribulations are no longer tribulations. The sutra seeking in Sutra World has been smooth sailing. Even the Thunder Temple's protector has slacked off, not to mention the merit officers of my immortal palace. What else? It's possible that the merit officers of the Thunder Temple are negotiating with the Thunder Temple's protector. Zhenhan smiled and pointed to the sky. Maybe they don't like each other and are killing each other. Hee hee. Dragon Horse Zhenfeng also smiled and said the same thing as Zhenhan. The 3 reasons that third senior apprentice brother mentioned sound reasonable. Moreover, the Immortal Palace will also have misgivings about their face and won't use such despicable methods. However, don't forget that on the hidden Immortal Continent, there are still the 4 great clans and the 100 clans. If this is the case, third senior brother, you are just lucky. Zhenhan's sweat dripped down from his forehead. His situation was very similar to Dragon Horse Zhenfeng's. It was just that his status was a bit more official than Dragon Horse Zhenfeng's. If the 4 great clans really went back on their words and wanted to take advantage of the situation, he might really become a sacrifice. However, since there are 2 Zhenkongs, Zhenfeng and Zhenhan looked at each other again, and a knowing smile appeared on their faces. They whispered to each other through telepathy, then the danger we're in is gone. However, a moment later, Zhenhan whispered, from the looks of it, we have temporarily avoided the danger. However, we still have to be careful. Before the truth comes to light, anything is possible. Everyone sweeps the snow in front of their own door. Don't worry about the frost on the roof of others. Draconic Horse Zhenfeng was naturally very interested in this matter and whispered, who cares who is the real Zhenkong and who is the fake Zhenkong? Protecting ourselves is the right thing to do. Chunzong pulled Tuo Cao and walked at the front. Although he was not much faster than Dragon Horse Zhenfeng and Zhenhan, he still couldn't hear the words of his 2 disciples. He also didn't understand the thoughts of his 2 disciples. He also didn't know that although he had obtained the sutra that could illuminate the hidden immortal continent, could the people who schemed and plotted against each other really let the Mahayana Sutra illuminate the hearts of the people? The night was extremely dark. There were no stars in the sky. Behind them, a gale gradually formed on the sea and a whistling sound gradually sounded. However, this whistling sound couldn't cover up the crackling sound of fighting above Chunzong's head. Occasionally, there would be a loud sound in the distance. It was unknown which Zhenkong was knocked to the ground. Then, there would be the sound of hills being smashed and trees being pushed down. Tuo Cao barely managed to walk for an hour. Then, Chunzong carried Tuo Cao and walked for another hour. Chunzong couldn't hold on anymore. His body was sweating profusely. He stood on the dark road and looked around. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. However, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This smile was really meaningful. Even Mahavairokanna probably couldn't understand the meaning behind it. Zhenhan. Chunzong turned his head and looked at Tuo Cao who was sleeping on his shoulder. He said, go find a place to rest. Yes, master. Zhenhan responded. She looked up at the fighting in the night sky and flew up slightly. Her eyes flashed with a clear light. She pointed with her finger and said, Master, there is a shabby cottage over there. No one lives there. Why don't we go there? Okay. Chunzong nodded and was about to walk in that direction. Zhenhan looked at Chunzong and said in a low voice, Master, give Tuo Cao to Disciple. Disciple will bring her there and tidy up the cottage. Amitabha. Go and tidy up. Tuo Cao is sleeping soundly. Don't wake him up. Chunzong panted and replied. Zhenhan smiled and said, Master, you underestimate Disciple. How can Disciple wake Tuo Cao? Then, Zhenhan raised her hand and Tuo Cao gently floated up. Chunzong smiled and let Zhenhan fly away with Tuo Cao. He didn't know when the fighting in the sky ended. Chuanzang only knew that when he woke up from his meditative state, the entire thatched hut was rattling. The salty sea breeze was blowing outside, and heavy rain was pouring down. The entire thatched hut seemed to be about to be overturned by the storm. The storm had finally come. Chapter 4569. Amidst the wind and rain, Mo Cow curled up her small body and laid beside Chuanzang. Even the wind and rain couldn't wake her up from her dream of having parents. Looking at the smile on Mo Cow's face, Chuanzang sighed and stood up. As soon as Chuanzang moved, the originally closed wooden door opened with a loud bang. A gust of wind mixed with the cold rain rushed into the thatched cottage. Chuanzang hurriedly stood to the side and blocked the rain that landed on Mo Cow's body. However, a gust of cold wind still woke Chang Cow up. She rubbed her eyes and was about to act coquettishly when the smile on her face disappeared. Returning to reality, she hurriedly stood up carefully and stood beside Chuanzang like a maidservant. "Master." Outside the cottage, the two Zhenkongs each held a magic wand and stared at each other. They spoke in unison. "Tell me which one of us is the real one and which one is the fake one." "The real one stays, the fake one, scram." Although the torrential rain outside the cottage was heavy, layers of demonic aura were generated in the space a few feet around the two Zhenkongs. The demonic aura was scorching hot like flames, preventing the torrential rain from landing on the two Zhenkongs. However, the two Zhenkongs were covered in mud and even had some bloodstains. It was obvious that they were injured during the fight. Chuanzang looked at them and felt his heart ache. After listening to the two Zhenkongs, he understood that the two Zhenkongs were exactly the same. Neither of them could defeat the other. That was why they came to such a compromise. Unfortunately, Chuanzang looked at them again and again. After the time it took to finish a meal, he spoke, "Disciple, I really can't tell. Who is the real Zhenkong? You need the heavenly eye of Buddhism to be able to tell, right? Can't both of you fly? If you can, go to Lei-Yin Temple. Mahavairokkana should be able to tell the difference." "Monk." To Chuanzang's surprise, the two Zhenkongs spoke at the same time. "You think I've been protecting you all this time? Now that I need your help, you can't even tell who is the real one and who is the fake one." Chuanzang was not surprised by Zhenkong's lack of respect. What he found strange was that the two Zhenkongs actually spoke the same word. He said helplessly, "Oh Zhenkong, you've seen it for yourself. It's not that I don't want to help you. Whatever you want to say, that fake knows in advance. Even the way you speak is the same. How can I tell the difference?" "If that's the case," the two Zhenkongs said at the same time, "let's go find the Vairocana revered one. Monk, be careful along the way. Go, master will wait for you here." Chun Kung nodded and replied, "Hehe, monk, do you think Lei-Yin Temple is a small fishing village?" The two Zhenkongs mocked, "It'll take months or even years for us to make a round trip. You'd better go on your own." "I see." Chuanzang was stunned. "If that's the case, why don't you wait until Zhenjie comes back?" "Him?" The two Zhenkongs sneered. If only he could see through it. Then Chunzong hesitated and asked, "This is already the hidden immortal continent. Can the immortal palace help?" That's right, that's right." Hearing this, the two Zhenkongs were overjoyed and shouted, "Damn Zhenhan, why aren't you hurrying to find the merit cow on duty?" "Second senior brother." Zhenhan smiled bitterly. "With such strong winds and heavy rain, where do you want me to find?" Without waiting for him to finish, the two Zhenkongs raised their wands and said, "Damn it, if you dare to say another word, I'll beat you to death." Seeing that the two Zhenkongs were angered, Zhenhan did not dare to stay out of it. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Second senior brother, don't be anxious. I'll go and find the merit cow on duty now. Hurry back." The patience of the two Zhenkongs had long been worn out. He waved his wand and said, "Be careful of my wand." "Yes, yes." Zhenhan hurriedly nodded his head and hurriedly left on his cloud. Damn it. The eyes of the two Zhenkongs turned blood-red, and there were flames within the blood-red eyes. "Both of you are useless. You can't even see through a demon. Fight." As he said that, the two Zhenkongs started fighting again. Seeing the two fire apes fighting in the air again, Chunzong carefully closed the door. However, before he could turn around, Xiao Cao's words gave him a fright. "Mars. Master." Xiao Cao's voice was as soft as a mosquito. I know who is The real one. What? Chunzong was shocked. Without hesitation, he stepped forward and covered Xiao Cao's mouth. He said in a low voice, "Do you want to die? Don't say it out loud. That fake one can beat you to death with a single blow." Xiao Cao nodded her head sensibly and pursed her lips. At this moment, one of the two Zhenkongs who were fighting suddenly glanced at the thatched cottage below him and a ferocious glint appeared in his eyes. That figure actually had the intention to descend. However, the other Zhenkongs was fighting excitedly. He was entangling this Zhenkongs tightly. This fake Zhenkongs also managed to extricate himself in a short period of time. After a while, the two of them flew high into the dark clouds. The sounds of fighting gradually disappeared. Hearing that there was no movement outside, Chunzong lowered his voice and said, "Xiao Cao, wait for a while. Wait for my eldest disciple to return." Xiao Cao nodded her head again. Chunzong looked at the wind and rain outside the cottage and asked in bewilderment, "Xiao Cao, how can you tell?" Xiao Cao looked at Chunzong and hesitated for a while. She said in a low voice, "Because he is really my enemy. I must remember him. I want to avenge my parents." Amitabha. Chunzong's heart was filled with mixed feelings. He said, "Xiao Cao, how about this poor monk recite a scripture for you?" "Sure, master." Xiao Cao nodded. Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, when he walked the deep prajna parameter for a long time, he saw that the 5 skandhas were all emptiness. He transcended all suffering. Chunzong placed his palms together and recited softly. Xiao Cao's face was filled with confusion. She did not know what Chunzong was reciting, but she listened obediently. Boom! At this time, a loud sound came from outside the cottage. It was unknown whether it was the wind and rain or the aftermath of the battle, but the roof of the cottage was suddenly lifted and the wind and rain poured in. Chunzong immediately understood what happened. He did not hesitate and pulled Xiao Cao into his arms. There was no fear on his face. He raised his head and looked at the wind and rain while chanting the Heart Sutra of Prajna Paramita. Clap, clap, clap. The sound of the magic wands hitting each other was endless. Soon after, the sound gradually faded away. However, Chunzong was not at ease. He still protected Xiao Cao in front of his chest, blocking the wind and rain and danger. "Damn it." Longma Zhenfeng's voice came from outside the cottage. "I wanted to be idle for a while, but you had to drag me out. I am the 10th prince of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. Now, I have become a craftsman repairing a cottage." Following Longma Zhenfeng's voice, the roof that was previously lifted returned and blocked the wind and rain. "Master, are you all right?" Dragon Horse Zhenfeng was very thorough in evading. He didn't even want to meet Zhenkong face to face. After asking this question, before Chunzong could reply, he had already disappeared. Chunzong's body was already soaked, but he did not dare to be careless. He did not dare to move his body and continued to protect Xiao Cao while chanting the sutra. 2 hours later, the rain gradually lessened and the wind weakened. In the distant sky, Zhenhan flew over with 2 earthen lords. "Damn it!" The 2 Zhenkong's eyes flashed with golden light at the same time as they cursed, "Useless things, why did you find 2 earthen lords?" However, the 2 Zhenkongs stopped at the same time. One of them glanced at the cottage that was gradually getting further away and seemed to be calculating something in his heart. "Second senior brother," Zhenhan shouted, "this little brother has found the land of the immortal palace. Useless things, can they tell who is fake?" The 2 Zhenkongs did not hesitate to curse. "Second senior brother, you don't know." Zhenhan smiled, "I also have no way to find the earthen lords on duty. The only one I can find is the earthen lords. However, I heard from these 2 earthen lords that they met the earthen lords on duty yesterday. They should be dealing with the Buddhist sect's guardian heavenly kings and venerables. They will be back soon." "How long?" one Zhenkong said impatiently while the other Zhenkong looked at the cottage. Seeing that the fake Zhenkong did not say anything, the real Zhenkong suddenly turned his head and looked at the fake Zhenkong. The fake Zhenkong laughed coldly. "What are you looking at? You fake, when the earthen lords on duty come, you will be exposed." "Ha ha ha." The real Zhenkong used his hand to hit his chest and shouted, What a joke, what a joke. Between the two of us, who is the one who is afraid? Could it be that you are thinking of escaping? Ha ha ha. The fake Shen Kong used his hand to hit his chest and said, "How can I be afraid? Masters." The two Earthen Lords said with a smile, "We have already sent a message to the Earthen Lords on duty. I believe that they will be back soon." Good, good, good. We will wait here. The two Shen Kong spoke at the same time. Hearing this, the two Earthen Lords felt their hair stand on end. This was because the two fire apes were saying the same words and doing the same actions at the same time. It was truly strange. This wait lasted for a whole hour. The two Shen Kong scratched their ears and cheeks anxiously. This was especially so for one of them. His eyes would occasionally flash with an ominous glint as if he was looking at the two Earthen Lords. However, in reality, he was looking at the ground. Needless to say, this was definitely the fake Shen Kong. He had already heard the words of the Earthen Lords and wanted to get rid of the Earthen Lords. If there was only the real Shen Kong, he would not hesitate to rush down and kill the Earthen Lords. In fact, he had already tried flying down earlier. However, the real Shen Kong was watching him closely. As long as he moved, the real Shen Kong would fight him. Moreover, the Earthen Lords were being protected by Chuanzang. The fake Shen Kong would not be able to kill the Earthen Lords in a short period of time. Furthermore, the two Earthen Lords said that the Earthen Lords on duty were about to arrive. The fake Shen Kong was unable to grasp who the Earthen Lords were, what their cultivation level was, and when they would arrive. He was afraid that the moment he landed, the reward would arrive and mess up all the arrangements he had painstakingly made. Therefore, he hesitated again and again. It was during this little bit of hesitation that an hour passed. Looking at the storm and the sky revealing the light, the fake Shen Kong almost didn't dare to believe it. Chapter 4570. Damn it. The fake Shen Kong cursed angrily. He finally made up his mind to attack regardless of the consequences. Unfortunately, as soon as he moved, the real Shen Kong, as he expected, thought that he was going to attack. He also cursed and rushed over with his magic wand. "Roar, do you think I am afraid of you?" The fake Shen Kong roared furiously. His magic wands rained down like rain, and his body rapidly plummeted to the ground. Swoosh. Right at this moment, for dignified gazes swept over. The moment they landed on the two Shen Kongs, they couldn't help but be stunned. Immediately after, 4 voices came from afar in unison. "This. What is going on? Why are there 2 Shen Kongs?" Along with the voice, boom boom. Righteous chi rushed down from the sky like a torrent, enveloping the space around the 2 Shen Kongs. Within this righteous chi, 2 Confucian generals in battle armor and 2 Confucian cultivators in official robes flew over on auspicious clouds. Before they could land, Junhan smelled a trace of mellow wine fragrance from the righteous chi. Damn it. Junhan cursed in a low voice and looked at the 2 Earth Lords. The 2 Earth Lords seemed to have smelled something and their faces looked awkward. They looked at each other and hurriedly moved forward to greet the 4 Earth Lords. This lowly one greets the 4 merit officers. Damned Earth Lords. The one in front was a Confucian cultivator wearing a red official robe. He had a fat head and big ears. His stomach was slightly protruding and the wings on his official hat were slightly swaying. Under the hat, he had a red face and a pair of eyes that were even more protruding than his stomach. This Confucian cultivator was holding an object that looked like an imperial tablet. When he saw the 2 Earth Lords bowing, he scolded, "The sutra-seeking state of bliss has just arrived at my hidden immortal continent and there is such a huge anomaly. Why didn't the 2 of you report it? How should the 2 of you be punished?" The 2 Earth Lords panicked and hurriedly reported, 4 merit officers, "This lowly one, didn't know that the sutra-seeking state of bliss had passed by this lowly one. Furthermore, the sutra-seeking state of bliss is not within this lowly one's responsibility." What? The merit officer was angry and scolded, "The sutra-seeking state of bliss is a huge matter of my immortal palace and thunder monastery. How can it not be within your responsibility? Aren't you neglecting your duties by saying such things?" The other landlord was even more straightforward. "This lowly one has already sent the information about this place to Sir Merit Officer 2 hours ago." "Oh, The merit officer was startled. He turned his head to look at the other Confucian general who was wearing battle armor and holding a hatchet in his hand. He asked curiously, "Merit officer on duty, is there such a thing?" The merit officer's face was also slightly red, but his expression didn't change. He faintly replied, "Lord Merit Officer, I have received some messages, but I don't know which one is from the local land. After all, we have to deal with the Buddhist sect's guardian heavenly kings. There are too many things, and it's difficult to deal with them one by one." As he spoke, the merit officer on duty took out a few small booklets that looked like memorials. He casually flipped through them a few times and took out one of them. He opened it and nodded. "Indeed, it has been issued. Since that's the case, you are all innocent." The merit officer came to a conclusion. He looked at the ground and said proudly, "Thank you, my lord." The two landlords finally heaved a sigh of relief. Then, they immediately asked, "My lord, we still have duties to do. Do you think we can leave first?" "Leave?" The merit officer on duty glanced at the two Kongs who were still fighting fiercely. He faintly said, "Is there anything more important in the hidden immortal continent than sutra seeking in nirvana? This?" The two landlords didn't know how to answer. Junhan hurriedly said, "Lord Merit Officer on duty is right. Sutra seeking in nirvana came from nirvana to the hidden immortal continent. Previously, everything was in order in nirvana, but when it came to our hidden immortal continent, there was a problem. If our immortal palace didn't handle it properly, it would damage the face of us Confucian cultivators." "That's right, that's right, that's right," the other old man wearing an official's robe praised. "The two of you also wait here for orders." "Yes, Lord Merit Officer on duty." The two disciples knew that this was Lord Merit Officer of the Four Seasons action to share the responsibility, but they couldn't do anything about it. They could only respond and respectfully stand at the side. "Chimpage." The merit officer on duty snorted coldly. He waved his hand and a dozen inscription chains as thin as a thumb appeared. They circled around in the nearby space. He said, "Where did this Evildor come from? He actually dares to disturb the order of our immortal palace's sutra seeking in nirvana? Hurry up and capture him." When the two Kongs who were fighting fiercely saw this, joy appeared on their faces. At the same time, they put away their magic wands and flew up to the clouds. They shouted, "Old Merit Officer, you guys are finally here. Hurry up and let us see which one is real and which one is fake." "Damn it." The merit officer on duty cursed in a low voice. He raised his head and looked at the sky, which was filled with mottled clouds. It was as if he disdained to speak with the two Kongs. "Chimpage." The merit officer on duty didn't speak. The merit officer on duty shouted, "Where did this Evildor come from? He actually dares to disturb the order of our immortal palace's sutra seeking in nirvana? If you kneel down and beg for mercy now, we can still let you go. We might not necessarily capture you and bring you to the immortal palace. When we find you, you can blame us for being ruthless and killing you on the spot. Hurry, hurry." The two Kongs shouted at the same time. "Hurry up and use your divine abilities to find that damned Evildor." Kong. The merit officer on duty didn't use his divine abilities. Instead, he said coldly, "I have already heard from the guardian heavenly king that ever since you participated in the sutra seeking in nirvana, you have protected Chuanzang's safety. However, along the way, you have killed many yarrow and daoist cultivators. Is it because you have killed too many yarrow that he changed his appearance to harm you? Think about it yourself. Which powerful yarrow have you offended?" "Old merit officer." The two Kongs immediately became angry. However, they still restrained themselves and said, "Are you here to capture the Evildor? Or are you here to judge my merits and demerits? The number of yarrow and daoist cultivators I have killed has nothing to do with you. You have no right to judge my merits and demerit. How dare you?" The merit officer on duty roared. "You are merely a yarrow. You are already extremely lucky to have the qualifications to participate in the sutra seeking in nirvana. You actually dare to say such insolent words? Scram." The two Kongs were furious. "Don't try to act sanctimonious in front of me. If you have the ability, Then find the fake Shen Kongs. If you don't, then hurry up and scram. When we kill our way into the Immortal Palace, we will let the Immortal Emperor punish your criminals." With that, the two Shen Kongs moved and were about to fly towards the depths of the hidden Immortal Continent. Wait. The merit officer on duty naturally wouldn't let the two Shen Kongs leave. He retracted his gaze and glanced at them arrogantly. "Vile spawn, since you are not willing to grab this last chance, then don't blame me for being impolite." As he spoke, the merit officer slapped his forehead. His eyes flashed with a silver light, and a cold light shone down, covering the two Chens. However, a moment later, the merit officer's face was filled with surprise. He said, "Sirs, let's use the Four Seasons all-seeing technique at the same time." "It can't be." The merit officer on duty was astonished. However, when he saw the merit officer on duty's expression, he immediately shut his mouth. A bronze color appeared in his eyes. As for the merit officer on duty and the merit officer on duty who had been silent all this time, a clear light appeared in their eyes and landed on the two Shen Kongs at the same time. Not to mention the four merit officers, even Zhun Han could clearly see that under the Four Seasons detection technique, the color of the entire space seemed to have faded. Layers upon layers of light were extinguished and only black and white colors were left. Unfortunately, within the inscription chains, there were two identical Shen Kongs. Although their hair and clothes were gone, the two fire apes with flickering flames around their bodies were still the same. Cough cough. A moment later, the merit officer on duty coughed and the clear light disappeared. He then said, "Shen Kong, your situation is rather special. The four of us still need to study it." "Bullshit." The two Shen Kongs roared, "I've seen many people who don't do a single thing. However, this is the first time I've seen someone as shameless as you. If you have the ability to distinguish the two Shen Kongs, that's fine. However, since you're so useless, what qualifications do you have to humiliate me? Hit me." As he spoke, the two Shen Kongs raised their wands at the merit officer on duty. The merit officer on duty clearly didn't expect the two Shen Kongs to suddenly attack. The wands swept through the sky and instantly shattered the inscription chains. Caught off guard, the wands landed right in front of the merit officer on duty. Damn it! The merit officer on duty was alarmed. He waved his hand and countless pillars of boundless chi surged out like ocean waves in an attempt to block the two wands. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the two wands hit the merit officer on duty. With a loud explosion, the merit officer on duty shattered the merit officer on duty. Even his fingers were dripping with blood. "Rebel, rebel." The merit officer on duty shouted, "You guys really don't want to live anymore." As he spoke, the merit officer on duty pointed at the merit officer on duty and said, "Why aren't you guys killing these two Avilders?" "Sir." The merit officer on duty and the merit officer on duty looked at each other and replied, "We were ordered by the Immortal Emperor to protect the master and disciple of the sutra-seeking extreme bliss. Now that the two Shen Kongs can't distinguish the real from the fake, we can't do anything." Woo! The two Shen Kongs' wands once again fell from the sky and attacked the merit officer on duty's forehead. The merit officer on duty was alarmed and hurriedly flew up. As he flew, he shouted, "Quick, quick, send a message to Tai Bai Jinxing. He probably hasn't gone far yet. The Immortal Emperor's decree is in the hands of the merit officer on duty." The merit officer on duty calmly replied, "We don't have a message from Tai Bai Jinxing." Chapter 4571. Sir. The merit officer on duty did his best to dodge the two magic wands and shouted, "Whoosh!" Before the merit officer on duty could finish his words, the merit officer on duty waved his hand and a golden meteor shot into the sky, disappearing in an instant. Chimpage. Seeing that the message had been sent, the merit cow opened his mouth and several clouds appeared, blocking the magic wand as he shouted, "When Lord Tai Bai Jinxing arrives, see if I won't teach you a lesson." Whoosh! With a clear sound, the clouds were swept away and two Shen Kongs appeared in front of the merit officer on duty. The merit officer on duty was so frightened that he hurriedly retreated. Seeing that the merit officer on duty was retreating, the two Shen Kongs stopped. They lazily put away their magic wands and scratched the fur on their body, coldly saying, "The immortal officials of the Immortal Palace are only SOSO. No wonder they couldn't send out any capable subordinates." Previously, I didn't understand why Zhenhan was so lazy and tried to shirk his responsibility. Now that I look at you all, going too far is as bad as not going far enough. If you all also participated in the sutra seeking extreme bliss, I would have already beaten your butt. When Zhenhan heard this, his face turned ashen. Right now, he didn't want to help Zhen Kong find the fake Zhen Kong. Instead, he wanted to beat the real Zhen Kong to death. Alright, since Tai Bai Jinxing of the Immortal Palace is here, then I will wait here. Then I'll wait here and see what kind of ability that old man has. The two Zhen Kongs were also tired of fighting. They muttered as they stood in the air. However, the two of them revealed an ominous glint in their eyes as they stared at each other, as if they would attack if the other party wasn't careful. At this moment, the fake Zhen Kong no longer looked at the thatched cottage. His hesitation had already caused him to throw away his best chance. The arrival of the merit officer of the Four Seasons had completely ruined his plan. Now, he could only act according to the situation. Boom! In just a short moment, a rumbling sound could be heard in the distant sky. The vast energy pillar within several hundred li of the space was like a surging tide. Layers of whirlpools mixed with fragments of inscriptions were thrown into the sky like water splashes. Woo! Amidst the whistling of the wind, a dozen distorted and flat light shadows streaked across the sky and landed in front of everyone in an instant. A wave of majestic aura emanated from these light shadows, causing everyone to feel suffocated. Just as everyone was about to bow and salute, shua! A tri-colored rainbow bridge appeared among the dozens of lights and shadows, and shot towards the sky where everyone had come from. Boom boom boom! Hundreds of mighty pillars of energy descended, and the dozens of glowing figures instantly filled up. In an instant, they transformed into several 100 feet tall inspectors. These inspectors were all around the 6th grade of origin energy. Each of them stood there proudly, allowing the clouds around them to flow like water and cover the area within 100 miles. Woo! The three-colored bridge let out a roar and quickly shrank. An old man with white hair and a whisk flew out from the bridge. This old man had a kind face and looked very hale and hearty. However, when the old man landed in front of them, a formless pressure surged through the mighty aura in the sky, causing everyone to feel as if they were looking up to a tall mountain. This official greets Lord Tai Bai Jinxing. The merit keepers of the Four Seasons did not dare to be negligent. They all bowed and greeted respectfully. Tai Bai Jinxing's gaze swept across the two Zhen Kongs, and he already knew what had happened. He waved his whisk and said indifferently, "Wait for me to come over. You must have sent a message for this old man to come over because of these two fire apes. Lord is wise." The merit keepers of the Four Seasons said with a flattering smile, "You didn't even wait for this official to speak and you were already able to see the reason. This official truly admires you." Tai Bai Jinxing did not reply. Instead, he looked thoughtfully at the two fire apes, and then raised his head to look in the direction of the Eastern Sea. He said in bewilderment, "This is really strange. This matter of the real and fake Zhen Kong doesn't seem to be arranged by the Immortal Palace. Could it be a test from the Leiyin Temple? Old man Tai Bai." When the two Zhen Kongs saw that Tai Bai Jinxing did not differentiate between the real and fake Zhen Kong, and instead suspected that it was a trap from the Leiyin Temple, they could not help but cry out, "What exactly are you?" Before the two Zhen Kongs could finish speaking, the two patrol officers roared, "How dare you!" Then, with a loud boom, 2 bolts of 5 chi righteous lightning struck down at the same time, hitting the two Zhen Kongs. "Ai-oyo!" The two Zhen Kongs cried out in pain at the same time, and they rolled in the air in the same manner. Interesting, interesting. When Tai Bai Jinxing saw the two Zhen Kongs in the same situation, his eyes lit up. He could not help but stroke his beard and laughed. Just where did the Leiyin Temple get these demons from? They are actually so intelligent. Damn it. The two Zhen Kongs cried out in pain. Lightning circled around their bodies, and the mighty aura turned into inscription chains that bound their hands and feet. At the same time, they cursed softly, "Why are you torturing this old man for no reason? If you have the ability, hurry up and drag this demon out. Demons are hard to get rid of." Tai Bai Jinxing coldly looked at the two Zhen Kongs and said, "Even if this demon brought the Mahayana Buddhist scriptures to the hidden immortal continent, how many Buddhist sects can they ignite? Previously, this old man was still worried, but after looking at this fire ape, this old man finally understood the immortal emperor's intention. As he spoke, Tai Bai Jinxing pointed his finger at the two Zhenkongs, and the two Zhenkongs cried out in pain. Tai Bai Jinxing narrowed his eyes and looked at the two Zhenkongs and said, "Calling yourself this old man in front of this old man, didn't Xuanzang teach you to respect the old and love the young?" After speaking, Tai Bai Jinxing looked at the dozen patrol officers and ordered, "Wait and see which one is the real Zhenkongs and which one is the fake fire ape." "Yes, my lord." The dozen patrol officers did not dare to be negligent. A few of them used their eye-cleansing technique to look carefully, and a few of them took out their imperial equipment. Those imperial equipment were either mirrors or rings, and all of them emitted a misty green light. Unfortunately, after half a cup of tea's time, the patrol officers looked at each other in dismay. They looked at each other and said in unison, "My lord, please know that we are unable to identify them." "Ah! It can't be." Tai Bai Jinxing was somewhat bewildered. Moreover, his face was somewhat embarrassed and angry. "You all have the cultivation of great grandmaster, but you can't even see through the true form of these two demon clans?" "Yes, my lord." The patrol officer at the front was also somewhat ashamed. He replied in a low voice, "With our divine abilities, we can only see two fire apes that are exactly the same. We can't see any difference." Tai Bai Jinxing nodded. "If this is Lei Yin Temple's test, how could they let us Confucian cultivators find a flaw so easily? All of you, back off." "Yes, sir." The dozen or so inspectors retreated slightly and sealed off the nearby space. Swoosh. Tai Bai Jinxing waved his hand and a cold light flew out. It was like a full moon rushing into the sky. When this light appeared, everyone could see clearly that it was a mirror that was like a full moon. This mirror was different from ordinary mirrors. The surface of this mirror was light gold. However, this light gold color seemed to be slightly cold. Moreover, the surface of the mirror was not flat. It was actually a layer of uneven surface. The light on the surface of the mirror shot out from the uneven surface, bringing with it some black spots. "Quick!" Tai Bai Jinxing roared. He raised his hand and pointed. The mirror continued to spin in mid-air, and an oval light shadow was born in mid-air. Strange. Zhen Han, who was at the side, could clearly see that Tai Bai Jinxing's chanting was actually a Daoist mantra. As for the golden light that came from his finger, it was similar to Daoist magic power. Pu. Just as Zhen Han was in shock, Tai Bai Jinxing slapped the top of his head. A five-colored true energy surged out, turning into the shape of a pear blossom and rushed into the sky. When this cloud appeared, not only did it illuminate the surrounding tens of feet, it also caused thousands of pillars of vast chi to crash down. Woo! The cloud let out a trembling sound. In an instant, it expanded, and the five-colored pear blossom could be seen. It looked very lifelike. Go! Tai Bai Jinxing opened his mouth and blew. A gust of golden chi fell into the five-colored pear blossom. The cloud rolled and rushed into the light shadow formed by the rolling light shadow. When the cloud fell into the light shadow, it crashed into the mirror. Boom! The sound of thunder suddenly rang out. Strands of lightning appeared on the uneven surface of the mirror. Then, the entire surface of the mirror shone brightly. When the mirror flipped again, a faint golden pillar of light flickered a few times before crashing down. It was precisely the two Zhenkongs. How is this possible? After the thunderous roar, there was a deathly silence. However, Zhen Han's cry of surprise came at an untimely moment. "It's actually two fire apes." Under the pillar of light, the two Zhenkongs revealed their true demonic appearance. Within the flames that were thousands of feet in size, the two fire apes revealed their ferocious faces. Two sharp fangs protruded from their bloody mouths, and a pair of blood-red eyes were filled with ferocity. After Zhen Han's cry of surprise, she immediately came to her senses and hurriedly said in a low voice, "This junior knows her mistake." Then, she lowered her head with confusion in her heart. After all, no one knew the origin of the Zhenkongs. Now that two identical fire apes had appeared, how could the mastermind behind this be ordinary? Chimpage. Tai Bai Jinxing let out a cold snort, and a five-colored light appeared in his eyes. Within the five-colored light, Inscriptions that were even smaller than ants appeared. These inscriptions quickly gathered in the 5-colored light, forming circles of light. These circles of light rotated like growth rings and slowly fell into Tai-Bai Jinxing's eyes. Crack, crack, crack. The moment the circles of light touched his eyes, they immediately produced thunderbolts. These thunderbolts turned into 5-colored lightning and turned into a net. Through this net-like lightning, Tai-Bai Jinxing's gaze landed on the 2 fire apes' true forms. Ah! When he saw the 2 Zhenkongs in front of him clearly, Tai-Bai Jinxing was stunned. Then, as if he didn't dare to believe himself, he blinked his eyes, and the net of thunderbolts in his eyes flashed again. After half a cup of tea's worth of time, Tai-Bai Jinxing closed his eyes and the 5-colored halo slowly disappeared. When Tai-Bai Jinxing opened his eyes again, a strange smile appeared on his face. It seemed as if he had a card up his sleeve, but at the same time, it seemed as if he didn't know anything. Chapter 4572. Tai-Bai Jinxing raised his hand and pointed. The pillar of light on the mirror disappeared and slowly returned to his hand. Tai-Bai Jinxing was not in a hurry to put away the mirror. Instead, he played with the mirror in his hand and looked at the 2 Zhenkongs whose fire ape true form had completely disappeared. Old man Tai-Bai. At this moment, one of the Zhenkongs spoke while the other one didn't. However, right after the first Zhenkong finished speaking, the second Zhenkong also shouted, "Can you tell who is real and who is fake?" "Of course I can." Tai-Bai Jinxing seemed to have made a decision and replied with a smile. "Speak, speak." The 2 Zhenkongs shouted together, "Who is real and who is fake?" "Both of you are real and fake," Tai-Bai Jinxing replied with a double meaning. "Bullshit." One Zhenkong said angrily, "Since you can tell, why don't you dare to say it? Could it be, this is a scheme set up by your immortal palace?" The other Zhenkong also laughed and said, "Old man Tai-Bai, if you can't tell, then just admit it. Why are you deliberately mystifying things here? I heard that Immortal Palace's immortal Emperor Go Chen has a clear sky mirror that can search the entire world. Presumably, that thing can tell who is the real Zhenkong. When His Majesty Immortal Emperor Go Yi makes a move, I can see it clearly." Tai-Bai Jinxing said proudly. "If that is the case, Lord Tai-Bai Jinxing." One Zhenkong could not help but plead, "Tell me, who is the real Zhenkong? If I am the real one, then why didn't I kill that guy? This old man has already said that the 2 of you are both real and fake." Tai-Bai Jinxing sneered, "Thunder Sound Temple actually did this in Hidden Immortal Continent. I don't know what their intentions are. If that is the case, then why should I expose them? Let them deal with it themselves." Damn it, damn it. That Zhenkong shouted, "In this world, it is either real or fake. How can there be real and fake? I am the real Zhenkong. How can he be the real Zhenkong? Truth and falsehood, falsehood and falsehood, in your mouth, it's actually so profound. The heavens still exist." "That's right, that's right." The other Zhenkong also mocked. "Since you know the truth, why don't you say it? It will also let us know who is the true Confucian scripture master." Sun Lei. Tai-Bai Jinxing completely ignored the 2 Zhenkongs and ordered, "Take 4 patrol officers with you and protect Chuanzong well. Don't let anything go wrong. This subordinate understands." One of the patrol envoys replied and flew down to the thatched cottage with 4 other patrol envoys. At this moment, one of them, Zhenkong, was no longer as impatient as before. He looked on coldly without saying a word. "Sun Hong," Tai-Bai Jinxing ordered, "Send a message and ask the Thunder Temple's guardian Heavenly King and Namo Wise Manjushri to come back." Tai-Bai Jinxing enunciated the word please very loudly, as if he was angry. "Yes." One of the patrol envoys replied and was about to take out a communication object from his waist. At this moment, Tai-Bai Jinxing rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Namo Wise Manjushri is a famous bodhisattva of the Thunder Temple. If he doesn't come back after receiving the message, our immortal palace will be guilty of disrespect. Forget it. Sun Hong, go and ask them. I believe they won't be in a hurry to return to the Thunder Temple." "Yes, my lord." Sun Hong agreed, and thousands of lights and shadows appeared around her. These lights and shadows twisted and extended toward the East Sea along with the great pillar of Qi. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Seeing Sun Hong fly away, the two Zhen Kongs shouted in irritation and waved their magic wands. "I'll beat you to death, you damned imposter!" Crackle, crackle. The two Zhen Kongs began to fight again. However, because there were several inspectors in the sky who had sealed the space, the two Zhen Kongs could only fight at an altitude of several thousand feet. They could no longer freely descend. Amitabha. Seeing the 5 patrol envoys descending and protecting the thatched cottage, Chunzong hurriedly walked out of the thatched cottage and bowed. "This poor monk has something important to tell you." Sun Lei didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly descended and returned the greeting. "Master, are you hungry? I'll immediately ask the Earth Lord to bring some vegetarian food here." Amitabha, this poor monk is talking about the two Zhen Kongs. Chunzong pulled Maro Cow and said, "This child can tell who is this poor monk's true disciple." "Ah! How is that possible?" Sun Lei was shocked. "These two fire apes look exactly the same and their divine abilities are also the same. Even I can't tell them apart. How can this little girl of the mortal realm tell them apart?" "Amitabha, I'm ashamed to say this." A bitter expression appeared on Chunzong's face. He said, "It's this poor monk's fault. My disciple Zhen Kong accidentally killed Maro Cow's parents in order to subdue demons and devils." Sigh, Amitabha, Amitabha. Sun Lei seemed to have understood and said softly, "The power of hatred is too strong. Master, please wait for a moment." After a while, Sun Lei returned and said softly, "Lord Tai-Bai Jinxing already knows about this." "Master, you don't have to care about this matter. We'll know in a while." Chunzong was puzzled. However, he knew that he was just a mortal. He put his palms together and said, "Amitabha, then I'll have to trouble you, benefactors." Then, Chunzong brought Maro Cow back to the thatched cottage and waited for the truth to come out. After about an hour, the two Zhen Kongs were tired. Just as they were about to stop, a Buddhist light appeared in the distant sky and the sea. Amidst the chanting of sutras, a Buddhist cloud seemed to be moving slowly, but it flew quickly without leaving a trace. It appeared in front of everyone's eyes and immediately appeared in front of them. A mocking look appeared in Tai-Bai Jinxing's eyes as he nodded slightly at the inspectors. As the inspectors nodded, they raised their hands and waved. Hundreds of inscription chains appeared and sealed off the space within a few thousand feet. No one could see what was going on inside. Then, Tai-Bai Jinxing waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and teleported to the front. He raised his hand and saluted, "Greetings, Manjushri. We've only parted for a few hours. Now, I have to trouble Manjushri to come back. I'm really sorry." Manjushri smiled and hurriedly returned the salute. "Benefactor, you're too polite. We're all waiting for the Sutra of Nirvana to be completed successfully. It's nothing for me to fly back and forth a few times. I just don't know. Benefactor, do you have something important to say?" Saying this, Manjushri looked at the sealed space and was puzzled. Behind him, several heavenly guardians of the Buddhist sect also glared at the inspectors and finally fixed their eyes on Sun Hong. Sun Hong shrugged and flew to Tai-Bai Jinxing's side. He only said that Tai-Bai Jinxing had something important to say. He didn't mention anything about the two Zhen Kongs. "Bodhisattva, you really don't know?" Tai-Bai Jinxing smiled again and asked meaningfully. Manjushri shook his head. "I really don't know what you have to say. Please say it clearly." "Bodhisattva." Tai-Bai Jinxing frowned and said unhappily, "The matter has already come to this point. Why are you still hiding it? I've already found something strange. If I say it out, Mahavarokana World Venerable's face will not look good." "Benefactor." Manjushri was even more puzzled. He raised his hand and pointed at the sealed space. "I really don't understand. Is it the strange thing that Shizhen said?" "Indeed." Tai-Bai Jinxing saw Manjushri's reaction and felt a little nervous. After answering, he asked tentatively, "Bodhisattva really doesn't know what's inside?" "I really don't know. Please enlighten me." Manjushri nodded and answered. "Okay." Tai-Bai Jinxing smiled faintly and ordered, "Open the space and invite Manjushri Bodhisattva to take a look." "Yes." Everyone nodded and waved their hands. All the inscription chains were withdrawn, revealing the two Zhen Kongs in the space. "Ah!" Manjushri was shocked. Why are there two Zhen Kongs? Yes. Tai Bai Jinxing smiled. There are two Zhen Kongs. That's why I don't know which one to choose. I specially invite Manjushri Bodhisattva to guide me. Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva. The two Zhen Kongs immediately jumped out of the space and flew to Manjushri Bodhisattva. They bowed and said, Zhen Kongs greet Bodhisattva. Unfortunately, after saying one sentence, the two Zhen Kongs shouted again, I am the real Zhen Kongs. He is the fake Zhen Kongs. You are the fake Zhen Kongs. I am the real Zhen Kongs. The other Zhen Kongs shouted with the same voice. Roar. As he spoke, the two Zhen Kongs roared and started fighting again. Manjushri Bodhisattva frowned and put his palms together. He asked, Amitabha, benefactor, which one is the real Zhen Kongs? I can't tell. Tai Bai Jinxing smiled. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked Bodhisattva to return. Benefactor, didn't you find something fishy? Manjushri Bodhisattva said unhappily. Fishy is fishy. The truth is the truth. Tai Bai Jinxing smiled and said, I can only find something fishy. As for the truth, I'm afraid only the Buddhist faction can find it. Hearing this, Manjushri Bodhisattva understood and said, Amitabha. Benefactor, you are overthinking. There must be some misunderstanding. My lay-in temple has always done things openly. It is impossible for us to do anything behind the scenes. Moreover, Chuanzang just brought his disciple back to the hidden immortal mainland. How could my lay-in temple do something so obvious? This fake Zhen Kongs must be from the demon race. Although Manjushri Bodhisattva said firmly, Tai Bai Jinxing was still skeptical. He nodded and said, Bodhisattva, I can believe in the world venerable. But these two Zhen Kongs. He. Bodhisattva, please use your divine power and we will know. Chapter 4573. Amitabha. Manjushri nodded slightly and raised his hand without hesitation. Swoosh. A spot of Buddha's light appeared out of thin air and quickly spread below Manjushri. In the blink of an eye, it covered the space where the two Zhen Kongs were fighting. As the Buddha's light fell, countless Sanskrit chants were heard and the sky was covered. The Sanskrit chants were blocked and the Sanskrit chants fell into the ears of the two Zhen Kongs. It was so painful that the two Zhen Kongs threw away their magic wands and covered their ears with their hands. They rolled in the air in pain. Then, Manjushri raised his foot and stepped on the Buddha's light. In the ripples of the Buddha's light, there were countless phantoms. In the phantoms, there were heavenly dragons, Buddhist kingdoms, and thousands of men and women. The phantoms fell on the two Zhen Kongs and an indescribable color appeared. The color faded and disappeared in the Buddha's light. Only two black and white fire apes were left in the space. Amitabha. Manjushri was surprised. He looked at Tai Bai Jinxing and asked curiously, how is that possible? Are they really two fire apes that look exactly the same? Bodhisattva, you've underestimated the power of that monster. Tai Bai Jinxing smiled and said, if the ordinary heavenly feet could see through his true appearance, why did you send me here? These inspectors from the Immortal Palace could kill the fake Zhen Kongs. I understand. Manjushri already understood what Tai Bai Jinxing meant. He nodded and used his right hand to pinch flower-pinching finger. He pointed at the light behind his head. 2 drops of golden light flew out from the light. Behind the golden light, there were tens of thousands of strands of faith. Swoosh. The 2 drops of golden light fell slowly. Wherever they passed, the void collapsed. Countless Buddhist kingdoms were hidden in the Buddha's light. However, after the Buddha's light passed by, the Buddhist kingdoms were annihilated. Indescribable waves came out from the annihilation and fell on the 2 black and white fire apes. When the 2 drops of golden light fell, the 2 fire apes emitted Buddha's light again. It was so bright that even Tai Bai Jinxing couldn't see what was going on inside. However, Tai Bai Jinxing heard Manjushri exclaim, How is this possible? Amitabha. Along with Manjushri's scream, there were many strange phenomena in the sky. Flowers fell from the void, and countless chanting sounds came from the void. Rays of Buddha's light condensed into crystal objects as thick as a child's arm and fell into the light behind Manjushri's head. As the Buddha's light and flowers fell, Manjushri's golden body became bigger and bigger, and the light became more and more dazzling. Great wish fulfilled. Tai-Bai Jinxing was even more surprised. He didn't understand what a fake Shen Kong had to do with Manjushri Bodhisattva's great wish. However, there was more than surprise in his eyes. At this moment, within the Thunderclap Temple, the 10,000 Buddhas were listening to his lecture. Suddenly, the Mahavirokana Buddha Lord, whose mouth was blooming with Buddhist lotuses, shuddered, and Buddhist lights radiated from his body. Countless heavenly flowers fell from the sky of the Thunderclap Temple and bloomed in front of the Lord. Namo Amitabha. As the Mahavirokana Buddha Lord chanted, he turned to look at the Dipankara archaic Buddha Lord, who had his eyes closed, and transmitted his voice to him. Senior apprentice brother, did you sense it? Amitabha, Lord of the world, I saw it. The Dipankara archaic Buddha Lord opened his eyes and replied with a neutral expression, Ananda has appeared. Sigh, now that he has appeared. The Mahavirokana Buddha Lord sighed and said, it's still too late. Amitabha, it's still too late, and it's still too early. It doesn't matter if it's sooner or later, the Dipankara archaic Buddha Lord said and closed his eyes again. The Mahavirokana Buddha Lord didn't stop transmitting his voice to the Dipankara archaic Buddha Lord. The Thunderclap Temple was still filled with heavenly flowers, and no one knew what had happened. Only the Mahavirokana Buddha Lord, who had concealed himself within the void, frowned slightly, as if he was about to wake up from his meditation. Looking at the shore of the East Sea, the Manjushri Bodhisattva's scream faded away, and the Buddhist lights disappeared. The phenomenon of great wish fulfilled also disappeared instantly. The Manjushri Bodhisattva retracted his foot from the air. With a puzzled expression, his gaze landed on Shen Kong. How is it? Seeing that the Manjushri Bodhisattva's surprise didn't seem to be fake, Tai-Bai Jinxing smiled and asked, isn't this a little strange? This mystery. Should the Thunderclap Temple be the one to uncover it? Amitabha. The Manjushri Bodhisattva chanted and said, Benefactor, it's a long story. However, I can swear on the name of Buddha that I don't know about this, and the Thunderclap Temple doesn't know about this either. Then, Bodhisattva, what should we do? Tai-Bai Jinxing pushed the decision to the Manjushri Bodhisattva. However, the Manjushri Bodhisattva didn't hesitate at all and said, I can't make the decision. I still have to return to the Thunderclap Temple and kowtow to the Mahavirokana Buddha Lord. No way. Tai-Bai Jinxing was surprised. It's that serious. It's that serious. The Manjushri Bodhisattva affirmed. Bodhisattva. Before Tai-Bai Jinxing could say anything, Shen Kong shouted, with your abilities, you should know who's real and who's fake, right? This. The Manjushri Bodhisattva was a little troubled. After a while, he replied, Amitabha, real is fake is real. When real is fake, the fake is real. Although I can see through it, I can't see through it. What can I do? Bullshit. This Shen Kong scolded, one is an important minister of the Immortal Palace, the other is a bodhisattva of the Buddhist sect. Both of them can see who's real and who's fake. However, neither of them dares to admit it. One of them says real is fake is real. The other says real is fake is real. Then you tell me who's real and who's fake. That's right. Tai-Bai Jinxing nodded and said, real is fake is real. The Manjushri Bodhisattva also shook his head and said, you are wrong. Real is fake is real. Heavens! At this moment, Shen Kong still didn't dare to call him master. He could only throw himself into the air and cried with tears streaming down his face, in this world, what kind of justice is there? Even the immortal and Buddhist sects don't dare to say the truth. I really don't know. In this world, how can there be such a clear distinction between black and white? Seeing Shen Kong, the Manjushri Bodhisattva felt much better. He chanted and said, Amitabha, Shen Kong, there is no need for you to say any more. When we reach the Lei Yin Temple, the truth will naturally be revealed. That's right, you fake. Why are you crying here? When we reach the Lei Yin Temple, in front of my Buddha, everything will be revealed. The other Shen Kong stood in the air and sneered. You fake. Shen Kong was furious. He waved his magic wand and pounced towards the other Shen Kong. The other Shen Kong also said angrily, you are the fake. With that, the two Zhenkongs started fighting again. Amitabha! The Manjushri Bodhisattva chanted and waved his kasaya, capturing the two Zhenkongs in the air. He turned his head and said to Tai Bai Jinxing, I will have to trouble benefactor to stay here. I will be back soon. Take care, take care. Tai Bai Jinxing knew the importance of this matter. He cupped his hands and said, with this old man here to protect Chuanzang, nothing will happen. Just as he said that, woo-woo, a gust of evil wind blew. In the East Sea, a huge pig demon flew out from the sea and flew towards them. This pig demon was naturally Zhenjie. He scanned with his essence will and immediately realized that something was wrong. He blocked the Manjushri Bodhisattva and the other heavenly guardians. He shouted, Isn't this Manjushri Bodhisattva? Why do you have the time to come here from the Lei-Yin temple? Could it be that you saw that we have been working hard in the sutra-seeking state of bliss and wanted to invite us to have a vegetarian meal? Amitabha! Facing Zhenjie, who was stronger than him, the Manjushri Bodhisattva stopped. He clasped his hands together and said, the sutra-seeking state of bliss is in trouble. I am here to subdue this demon. This demon is of great importance. I cannot make the decision. I can only bring them back to the Lei-Yin temple and ask Mahavairochana of the world to personally issue a Buddhist decree. Damn it! Hearing that the sutra-seeking state of bliss was in trouble, Zhenjie immediately jumped up and said, Who did this? 3 monster kings just came. I fought them off with great difficulty. I chased them for several days to find out their background, but they still ran away. I didn't expect that they would create a diversion. Oh, by the way, Bodhisattva, how is my master? Chuanzang is fine. Manjushri Bodhisattva didn't dare to say more as he was afraid that Zhenjie would cause trouble. He said hurriedly, he is now under the protection of Tai Bai Jinxing, the inspector and the 4 seasons meritorious ministers of the Immortal Palace. He is very safe. I won't talk more with you. Go and protect Chuanzang now. Yes, Bodhisattva. Seeing that the Manjushri Bodhisattva was anxious, Zhenjie didn't dare to say more. He bowed and watched the Manjushri Bodhisattva leave. However, after flying for a few miles, Zhenjie suddenly shouted, Bodhisattva, tell Mahavairochana of the world not to cause any trouble. Fighting and killing every day. You don't look like a monk at all. Manjushri Bodhisattva's body swayed in the air. He said a few words to the Guardian King and then turned into Buddha's light and left. When the Manjushri Bodhisattva couldn't see him anymore, Zhenjie stuck out his tongue and shouted, Oh my! What happened? Even the Manjushri Bodhisattva came. I have to go and take a look. I don't want my master to know that I sneaked out to sleep. When Zhenjie came back, the inspector and the 4 seasons meritorious ministers were relieved and didn't dare to stop him. After Zhenjie greeted Tai Bai Jinxing, they put him into the thatched cottage. Seeing that Zhen Han and the dragon horse Zhenfeng were outside the thatched cottage and that Cao Cao and Chuanzang were inside the cottage, Zhenjie was immediately angry and shouted, Master, where did that damn fire ape go? I was just chasing after the 3 demon kings. How dare he neglect his duty and cause Master to suffer such a great fright? Chapter 4574. Amitabha, Zhenjie, don't worry. Chuanzang knew that Namo wise Manjushri had taken away the 2 Zhenkongs, so he was relieved and said, Wait for me to tell you what happened. Okay, please tell me, Master. Zhenjie listened and sat down on the ground again. His shrunken body still looked clumsy. After Chuanzang told him about the real and fake Zhenkong, Zhenjie jumped up from the ground and shouted, How is this possible? There's a fire ape that looks exactly like Zhenkong. Even Tai Bai Jinxing and Nanwu Wisdom Manjushri couldn't tell the difference. That's how it should be. Chuanzang was naturally kept in the dark. He pointed at Chang Cao and said, Chang Cao can tell, so I told you to wait until you came back. Sigh, Master, those 3 demon kings are really powerful. Zhenjie quickly denied responsibility and said, I chased them for a long time but couldn't catch up to them. I'm sorry for making you suffer. Amitabha, it doesn't matter if I suffer or not. Chuanzang replied, just don't let Zhenkong suffer. Although he's a bit cruel and lacks the compassion of a Buddhist disciple, he's doing it for my own good. I'd rather suffer in his place. Don't worry, Master. Zhenjie waved his hand and said, This matter has been brought up to Vairocana, revered Buddha. He'll definitely clear second junior brother's name. That's for the best. Chunzong nodded, but then he became worried and said, however, I'm still worried. What are you worried about, master? Zhenjie smiled and said, in the 3 continents, other than, Zhenjie glanced at the sky and lowered his voice, other than immortal Emperor Go Chen and the great saints of the Great Sacred Hall, who else can be stronger than Vairocana, revered Buddha? I hope so. Chunzong nodded and looked at Chang Kao, saying, Chang Kao is hungry. Zhenjie, go get some vegetarian food and come back. Yes, master, Zhenjie replied. Then, he turned around and shouted, Gong Kao of the 4 seasons, quickly come out. Hearing Zhenjie's shout, Gong Kao hesitated and glanced at Tai Bai Jinxing, who was sitting cross-legged in the sky. Boom! Suddenly, Gong Kao felt a sharp pain in his head, as if 10,000 horses were trampling over him. His body fell from the sky involuntarily, and Zhenjie's cold snort was heard amidst the thundering hooves. I'm calling you, where are you looking? Yes. The Gong Kao of the 4 seasons didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly landed and bowed. Grandmaster, what are your orders? Tai Bai Jinxing sat cross-legged in midair with his eyes closed as if he had not seen anything. After all, this was a demonic beast that was on the verge of reaching the 9th grade of essence force. Even someone as powerful as Tai Bai Jinxing did not want to bother with him. My master is hungry. Hurry up and go beg for alms, Zhenjie ordered. Oh! The Temple of the 4 Seasons paused and looked around. There were indeed a few patrol envoys standing guard at the side of the thatched cottage. They could only respond and move into the distance. This matter is a little strange. Zhenjie took out a strand of seaweed from somewhere and held it in his mouth. He lay down, crossed his legs, and shook his trotters. He looked at the roof of the thatched cottage and thought to himself, there's actually a demonic beast that can transform into a fire ape. What is this demonic beast trying to do? Could it be that he wants to replace Zhen Kong? Damn it, if it was Zhen Han or Zhen Feng, I wouldn't care. But this is Zhen Kong, and Daoist Xiao mentioned him before. If anything happens to Zhen Kong, Daoist Xiao will skin me alive. But, it's fine. Now, everything will be handed over to Mahavairocana. I'm sure Daoist Xiao won't blame me when he finds out. While Zhenjie was worried, Namo Wise Manjushri raised his hand and pointed at the light behind his head. A Buddhist light gushed out from the light and surged into the void. The void was torn apart layer by layer. As the void overlapped, a majestic lei-yin temple with overflowing Buddhist light vaguely appeared in the void. As soon as the Buddhist light fell into the lei-yin temple, the void immediately collapsed and everything disappeared. A teleportation channel condensed from Buddhist light appeared under Namo Wise Manjushri's feet. Amitabha. Namo Wise Manjushri looked at the Buddhist light condensed into golden runes that flowed around the channel like tadpoles. He chanted Buddhist names and stepped on the channel. Woo-woo. A strange wind whistled in the space around the channel. Namo Wise Manjushri's figure disappeared into the channel, and the channel also disappeared into the void. Revered one. In the lei-yin temple, Mahavairocana was still chanting. Amidst the heavenly flowers, the guardian heavenly king reported, Namo Wise Manjushri has an important matter to report. Namo Amitabha. Mahavairocana's face showed mercy. He closed his mouth and said, Buddhism is fate. My Buddha will not help those who are not fated. Dharma is also fate. Dharma will not be taught to those who are not fated. Today's chanting ends here. Amitabha. Disciples thank revered one for your teachings. 10,000 Buddhas chanted Buddhist names and bowed. Summon Manjushri. Mahavairocana's eyebrows did not raise as he ordered lightly. Namo Wise Manjushri flew into the lei-yin temple and hurriedly bowed. Disciple greets revered one. Amitabha. Mahavairocana smiled. Is the handover of the East Sea smooth? The sutra seeking extreme bliss is coming to an end. I think the immortal palace will also pay attention to it. Revered one. Namo Wise Manjushri thought for a moment and replied, the handover of the sutra seeking extreme bliss went very smoothly. Disciple and the guardian heavenly king handed everything over to Tai Bai Jinxing and the many inspectors. Very good. Mahavairocana nodded. Since that's the case, Manjushri, Is there anything urgent that made you rush back to the Lei-Yin temple? Namo wise Manjushri looked at the Buddhas in the Lei-Yin temple and pondered for a moment. Then, he told Revered One about the real and fake Zhenkong. Finally, he said, Revered One, please no. Disciple, can't make a decision. That's why I brought both Zhenkong here. Revered One, please make a decision. Oh. Mahavairocana's curiosity was piqued and he asked, I've seen this Zhenkong before. He's only a fire ape with 4th grade elemental energy. Who would transform into his appearance and impersonate him? Moreover, he's a demon with 4th grade elemental energy. Can't you tell? At this point, the Mahavairocana revered Buddha's gaze froze. Then, the mirror behind his head suddenly spun rapidly. In an instant, countless pillars of Buddhist light rushed into the void. The Mahavairocana revered Buddha said mercifully, I understand now. Invite the 2 Zhenkongs out. Yes, Revered One. Namo wise Manjushri did not dare to delay. He swung his kasaya and the 2 Zhenkong fell out. The 2 Zhenkong landed. When they looked around, tears welled up in their eyes. They knelt in front of the 9-grade lotus platform and said, Revered One, disciple has escorted Chuanzang's master to seek the sutra in nirvana and experienced countless difficulties. Now, we've just left the Eastern Sea territory and entered the hidden immortal continent. I never expected that there would be a daring demon who dared to disguise himself as disciple and tried to steal disciple's merit of seeking the sutra. Although Taibai Jinxing and Manjushri Bodhisattva could see clearly, they did not dare to make a rash judgment. They only said what was real and what was fake was real. These disciples did not understand. Now, disciple has rushed to the front of Revered One. I hope that Revered One can uphold justice for disciple and clear disciple's name. Venerable Manjushri, do you know why you can't make a decision? Mahavairocana's Revered One asked with a smile. Namo wise Manjushri was startled. He hurriedly bowed and said, Revered One, please enlighten me. Although you are knowledgeable in Buddhism, you don't understand cause and effect. You only know how to do things, but you don't know the cause and effect of things. Mahavairocana's Revered One replied indifferently, Do you not know the cause of the sutra in nirvana? Do you not know the cause of your great ambition? First, there was the matter of seeking the sutra, then there was the person seeking the sutra. Do you know who is real and who is fake? Namo wise Manjushri revealed a smile and nodded, Disciple understands. The cause is real and the effect is fake. The cause is real and the effect is fake. Then, who do you think is real and who is fake? Mahavairocana's Revered One asked with a smile. Naturally, this Zhenkong is fake. With that, Namo wise Manjushri pointed at one of the Zhenkong and said seriously. That Zhenkong shouted and jumped up. He said furiously, Bullshit Bodhisattva. How can you reverse black and white? I'm the real Zhenkong, he's the fake Zhenkong. Amitabha, Zhenkong, you're real and fake. Do you know? Mahavairocana's Revered One chuckled. I don't want to listen, I don't want to listen, I don't want to listen. Zhenkong waved his hand impatiently and said, I can't be bothered to talk nonsense with you baldies. I'm going to find someone who understands. Someone who understands can be the judge for me. With that, Zhenkong moved his body and was about to fly away. The other Zhenkong laughed and pointed at that Zhenkong and said, See, I already said that you're fake and you're still trying to be brave. Where can you go now? Who can help you? Damn it. You fake. When that Zhenkong saw that Zhenkong mocked him, he was already furious. Seeing that he had nowhere to run, he waved his magic wand and smashed it at the other Zhenkong. You dare to show killing intent in front of Buddha, and you still say that you're not the fake Zhenkong? That Zhenkong was not afraid at all. He looked on as the magic wand fell and said, You're not worthy of sutra seeking nirvana. Amitabha. Mahavairocana's Revered One chanted and pointed his finger. That Zhenkong's magic wand fell to the ground and he was unable to move. Compassion appeared in the eyes of Mahavairocana's Revered One and he said, Zhenkong, don't be anxious. Listen to this seat's explanation. When you understand, you'll know why you're fake and he's real. Chapter 4575. Smack. Before the Mahavairocana Revered Buddha could finish his words, Zhenkong waved his magic wand and hit Zhenkong's head. Under the magic wand, this Zhen Kong couldn't move. He was glaring at the Mahavairokkana revered Buddha, but he didn't expect Zhen Kong to suddenly attack. He didn't have the strength to fight back at all. Seeing the magic wand coming at him like a huge mountain, this Zhen Kong's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. In the blink of an eye, thousands of lights and shadows flashed before his eyes. There were humans and monsters that he had eaten alive, humans that he had burned to death with his flames, and even monsters that he had killed with his magic wand. In the end, all the lights and shadows converged to form Xiao Hua's figure, an indomitable giant that stood between the heavens and the earth. Zhen Kong cried out mournfully, "Master." His tone was filled with reluctance, unwillingness, awakening, and regret. However, all of his emotions were turned into nothingness under the magic wand. This Zhen Kong didn't even have the time to scream. His brain exploded, and he died in front of the rank 9 Buddhist lotus. Following that, a primordial spirit flew out from Zhen Kong's body. Zhen Kong's eyes were sharp, and he waved his magic wand again. The Mahavairokkana revered Buddha cried out in alarm. He raised his hand and imprisoned Zhen Kong. He said angrily, "Ah! Amitabha! Zhen Kong, how can you kill without permission? Revered one." Zhen Kong giggled. "This fake disturbed the sutra-seeking extreme bliss and wanted to take away my merits. How can I let him go? Moreover, since he dared to be so arrogant in front of the revered one, he must have something to rely on. If I don't kill him, won't I be destroying the prestige of Buddhism? Revered one, did you not hear me? This fake even called me master before he died. This so-called master must be the mastermind behind all this." A rare trace of anger appeared in the Mahavairokkana revered Buddha's eyes. He stared at Zhen Kong for a few breaths of time before he said dejectedly, "Amitabha. Zhen Kong, your killing intent is too strong. Although you have contributed greatly by escorting Chuanzang, you have also broken many rules. I hope that this is the last time you break the precepts. In the future, you have to take this as a warning and cultivate properly. Otherwise, the sutra praying in nirvana will be for naught in the end." As the Mahavairokkana World Venerable finished his words, thunderous roars sounded around the Thunder Temple. Many places in the Thunder Temple collapsed, showing signs of decline. Countless Buddhist kingdoms were rapidly annihilated, and countless men and women were wailing in pain in the annihilation. Furthermore, the Buddhist light around the Mahavairokkana World Venerable and the entire Thunder Temple was also declining. Billions of heavenly flowers fell from the void of the Thunder Temple. As they fell, they withered and turned into dust. "Master." When Zhen Kong saw the change in the Thunder Sound Temple, he couldn't help but be shocked. When his gaze landed on the Mahavairokkana revered Buddha, he was even more shocked. He couldn't help but cry out, "Ah! Amitabha, the revered Buddha is Sai." When Zhen Kong saw the change, so did the 10,000 Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Shocked voices sounded from all over the Thunder Sound Temple. "Amitabha, excellent, excellent." Half of the Vairocana Buddha golden body that was previously radiating light rapidly withered as the Buddha's light faded. In just a moment, it had turned into a withered grayish-black color. Although there was still some Buddha's light flowing on it, the Buddha's light was also mixed with a grayish-black color. Even in the light condensed from the power of faith behind the Mahavairokkana World Venerable's head, half of the light turned pitch black. "Namo Amitabha." Namo Daxing Samantabhadra Bodhisattva stood before the Buddhist lotus and couldn't help but put his palms together. "Revered Buddha, what's going on? My Buddha. Is there a tribulation?" "Amitabha, tribulation is precepts, precepts are also desires. Desires can be fate, and fate can be the result." The benevolence on the Mahavairokkana World Venerable's face didn't change. Then, he said to Zhen Kong, "Zhen Kong, do you understand?" "Amitabha." Zhen Kong threw away his devil wand and knelt before the 9 grades Buddhist lotus. He said respectfully, "I'll remember your words, revered Buddha. From today onwards, I won't commit any more murders. I'll do my best to escort Chuanzang back to the Longevity Town and erect the golden body of the Namo Amitabha Bodhisattva on the river Tide Ridge. Go." The Mahavairokkana World Venerable flicked his sleeves and said, "Thank you, revered Buddha. I'll take my leave now." Zhen Kong bowed. After he stood up, he stared at the Mahavairocana world venerable's withering glory golden body for a while. Then, he lowered his head and left. The guardian heavenly king brought him back to the East Sea. For a moment, the 10,000 Buddhas looked at the withered golden body of the Mahavairocana world venerable and didn't know what to say. Senior apprentice brother. The Mahavairocana world venerable asked in a low voice, "Am I wrong?" Amitabha, there's no wrong, and there's no right. There's no right or wrong in this world. The Dipankara archaic Buddha world venerable chanted, "Zhenkong is wrong for being too cruel. What's wrong is, the timing of the Nirvana scripture praying was wrong. Namo Maitreya Buddha." At this moment, beside the Mahavairocana world venerable, the Maitreya Buddha world venerable's golden body appeared from the void. Other than benevolence, there was also a hint of anger on his face. "World venerable, I think you're wrong." "Amitabha, what wrong have I done?" The Mahavairocana world venerable raised his head. He didn't look at the Mahavairocana world venerable. Instead, he glanced at the 10,000 Buddhas and asked in a low voice. The world venerable's Buddhist mantras are well versed in the heavens and the earth. "You're the number one person in our Buddhism." The Mahavairocana world venerable glanced at the 10,000 Buddhas and said, "In this world, when it comes to seeing through the mundane world and karma, I'm afraid no other Buddhas would dare to compare with the world venerable. However, even if the world venerable has reached the golden body multiple transformations and is close to the limit, he's still a distance away from attaining the Buddha fruit. Moreover, according to my opinion, even if one's Buddha position is eternally solidified and attains the 9 transformations golden body, one would only be the lord of a region and the ruler of a world. Following the heavens and earth, reincarnation, and myriad eras, it still can't be compared. The so-called karma is the long river of time and space. Any cause may seem small, but the effect it causes is subtle. No one can forcefully disturb karma, not even my Buddha. The world venerable saw that the karma of this world had already been formed, yet he still had distracting thoughts and wanted to interfere with karma. "Isn't that wrong?" "Amitabha." The Mahavairocana world venerable chanted but didn't answer. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Since the creation of the world venerable Buddhism sect, countless Buddhas have been diligently pursuing the truth of Buddhism for countless years. The Mahavairocana world venerable continued. However, our Buddhism sect is now divided into 10 sects, namely the Attainment sect, the Possession sect, the Nature sect, the Harmony sect, the Tiantai sect, the Virtuous Head sect, the Zen sect, the Pure Land sect, the Vinaya sect, and the Tantra sect. Other than these 10 sects, there are countless smaller branches. Is their Buddhism sect the same as our Buddhism truth? In this disciple's opinion, not necessarily. This disciple thinks that our Buddhism sect's disciples are now burdened by their physical bodies. They have abandoned everything in their physical bodies and don't want to farm or fish. They only rely on offerings. If we Buddhas are pure of heart and few desires, it's fine. We can make a living with simple tea and plain food. However, there aren't many Buddhas who are pure of heart. This inevitably leads to misunderstandings. This is also the fatal point of the Confucian cultivators attacking our Buddhism sect. The so-called vermin is nothing more than this. This disciple has seen the Buddhas in the hidden immortal continent where a Buddhism sect was established. They supported themselves and didn't need to solicit alms. Similarly, they could use the property of the temple to support the old, the weak, the sick, and the disabled. They really did achieve widows, and loneliness. Then, Namo Maitreya Buddha spoke of his thoughts and his recent enlightenment. There was no lack of inconsistencies with the Pure Land world. "Amitabha." Junior apprentice brother, what do you mean by this? The Mahavairocana Buddha Lord listened quietly. In the end, the Buddhas were stunned and asked again. The mistake of the Buddha Lord has already been made. Moreover, the impact is severe. The Mahavairocana Buddha Lord's gaze showed no fear. He looked at the Mahavairocana Buddha Lord and said, "This disciple feels that this mistake is detrimental to the development of our Buddhism sect in the Pure Land world. Therefore, I hope that the Mahavairocana Buddha Lord and the Dipankara archaic Buddha Lord will reconsider." "Only reconsider?" asked the Mahavairocana Buddha Lord. Our Buddhism sect's words don't lie in words. It doesn't lie in words. Junior apprentice brother has spoken for so long. I already know what he's thinking. Mahavairokkana Buddha Lord. The Dipankara archaic Buddha Lord, who had been silent for a long time, finally spoke. The connection between the Pure Land world and the Buddhism kingdom has been severed for a long time. Not only is the flow of karma blocked, the cycle of reincarnation is also in chaos. Junior apprentice brother's vindication, the birth of the Namo Mahavati Samantabhadra, and the mystery of the Namo Mahavati Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's voice of the world. All of these revealed a trace of chaos in the Buddhism kingdom. Also, the mystery of the true and false chastity is also the tip of the iceberg. With so many entanglements, let alone Junior apprentice brother and me, even the Mahavairokkana Buddha Lord can't see clearly. Therefore, the Lord's judgment. At this point, the Dipankara archaic Buddha Lord stopped. Half a teardrop flowed out of his eyes, and his originally miserable face became even more sorrowful. Whether the Buddha nature is more than the human nature, or whether the human nature is more important than the Buddha nature, our Buddhism sect has never come to a conclusion. This disciple doesn't want to be entangled with the Lord any longer. The Mahavairokkana Buddha Lord's expression was calm as water. He said calmly, however, if the Buddha nature is imposed on the human nature, using one's own benefits to overpower the Buddha's benefits, then the Buddha is also a devil. Not only is my Buddha the Mahavairokkana Buddha Lord's Buddha, but I'm also the Dipankara archaic Buddha Lord's Buddha and the Mahavairokkana Buddha Lord's Buddha. I can't bear to see the Buddhas of the Pure Land world go astray. Junior apprentice brother, are you rebelling against the Thunderclap Temple? The Mahavairokkana Buddha Lord wasn't surprised at all. He said calmly, Junior apprentice brother, don't forget that you've only been in my Thunderclap Temple for a few years. You don't even know the secrets of my Thunderclap Temple. Lord, it doesn't matter if it's a day or a moment. If you don't realize it now, so what if it's 10,000 years? The Thunderclap Temple isn't here, nor is it far away. The Thunderclap Temple is in this disciple's heart. The Mahavairokkana Buddha Lord answered. As long as this disciple stays true to his heart, where isn't the Thunderclap Temple? Chapter 4576. Junior apprentice brother. The Dipankara archaic Buddha's tears were already dripping down. Through the void, they transformed into countless rivers and flooded countless Buddhist kingdoms. An ancient voice resounded within the Thunder Monastery. Have you decided? Not bad. The Maitreya Buddha nodded firmly. Such a Buddha is not a disciple's lay-in temple. Such a Buddhist sect is also not a disciple's Buddhist sect. As the future Lord Buddha, I have to think about the future. Junior brother, do you think you can walk out of the Thunder Temple? The Dipankara archaic Buddha's World Lord's voice carried a hint of threat. All of a sudden, a commotion broke out within the Thunder Sound Temple. The Maitreya Buddha smiled and raised his hand to slap his forehead. Boom! A Buddhist cloud gushed out with a Buddhist artifact floating in the cloud. 10,000 rays of Buddhist light soared into the sky as thousands of treasures surged. 7 Wonders Tree. The Dipankara archaic Buddha's World Lord was shocked, while the myriad Buddhas' expressions changed. Namo Maitreya Buddha. At that moment, 30% of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Arhats bowed in respect. Can I walk out of the Thunder Temple with the help of the Tree of 7 Wonders? The corners of Maitreya Buddha's mouth curled into a smile. Can this disciple use the 7 Wonders tree to spread the Buddha's light across the 3 continents? Can this disciple use the 7 Wonders tree to retrieve the distorted Buddha's light? Perhaps. The Dipankara archaic Buddha remained silent. Namo Amitabha. The Mahavairokkana world venerated one looked at the wonderful tree of 7 treasures that was overflowing with treasure light. His withered face was also a little stunned, but he said benevolently, Junior brother, do you still remember the agreement we made that day? Of course I remember. Maitreya Buddha said curiously. Didn't you say that I have a heart tribulation? Disciple has cultivated a Buddhist heart and diligently cleaned the mirror. There was no demonic tribulation that came close to me. Amitabha. The Mahavairokkana Buddha shook his head and said, I'm talking about your actions against the Thunder Temple, not your demonic tribulation. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Maitreya Buddha world-honored one chanted the name of Buddha. After a moment of hesitation, he nodded and said, I understand. I will never do anything that goes against Lei-Yin Temple. However, before the revered one of the world understands, I am not willing to stay in the Lei-Yin Temple. I would like to bring a group of bodhisattvas to another place to cultivate. As for when to return to the Lei-Yin Temple, that will depend on when the revered one of the world can cultivate his golden body again. As he spoke, the Maitreya Buddha raised his hand and was about to take away Zhen Kong's corpse and the soul entrenched in the Buddhist light. However, his hand moved and he stopped. He coldly looked at the Mahavarokana revered one and said, Revered one, this corpse should be left as a warning to the revered one. Furthermore, this disciple would like to ask the revered one of the world to properly preserve this corpse and soul so that he can give an account to his master in the future. What? Mahavarokana revered Buddha was suddenly stunned and asked curiously, Isn't his master, Namo Maitreya Buddha and revered one of the world can interfere with karma? Why can't others interfere with reincarnation? After the Maitreya Buddha finished speaking, he slowly got up. The 9-grade lotus platform below him also moved. The wonderful tree of 7 treasures above his head covered his golden body. A golden crack appeared in front of the Maitreya Buddha's head. The outline of a palace door appeared at the edge of the crack. Namo Maitreya Buddha. At this moment, a Buddhist chant resounded. Namo Maitreya Samantabhadra Bodhisattva moved his lotus platform and said, This disciple is willing to follow Namo Maitreya Buddha to cultivate outside. Namo Maitreya Buddha, this disciple is also willing to cultivate with you. At this moment, 40% of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Arhats, and other Buddhas stood up and left their seats. Leaving is staying, and staying is also leaving. Cultivation has always been in the heart. The Maitreya Buddha chanted loudly and stepped into the palace door. Junior apprentice brother, where do you want to cultivate? The Dipankara archaic Buddha suddenly asked. Snowy mountain, small exquisite temple. A voice faintly resounded. Not only did the Maitreya Buddha's figure disappear, but the other Buddhas also disappeared, and the Buddhist lights were extinguished. After a while, the Mahavarokana revered Buddha's voice resounded again, All Buddhas, retreat. Yes, revered one of the world. It was still the respectful voice of the 10,000 Buddhas. However, this voice was much fainter and weaker, just like the withered heavenly flowers in the Thunder Sound Temple. Revered Buddha. The Dipankara archaic Buddha's voice resounded amidst the bleakness. I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I still couldn't figure out why the Maitreya Buddha's revered Buddha would have a heart tribulation. Previously, I thought that he had recklessly attained enlightenment, causing his foundation to be unstable. However, I didn't expect that the cause was actually Ananda. Yes, I. The Mahavarokana revered Buddha's mouth was filled with bitterness as he answered, I didn't expect it either. Then, who's Zhen Kong's master? The Dipankara archaic Buddha asked as he looked at Zhen Kong's corpse and soul. The Mahavarokana revered Buddha answered plainly, Senior apprentice brother, why do you need me to say it? Don't tell me you don't know. Sigh, who else could it be other than Daoist Xiao, who has no origin and whose karma can't be detected? The Dipankara archaic Buddha sighed and said, This time, Ananda is in trouble. Since the revered Buddha is involved in this karma, he can't just ignore it. Fortunately, the Mahavarokana revered Buddha nodded slightly and said, Although the Fortune Gate's disciples have cleansed the heaven and earth board, and the immortal palace's feathers have perished in the soaring dragon mountain range, Xiao Hua is only a human Mahayana realm essence chi midstage 9th grade. He's still not enough to threaten my Thunder Sound Temple. Although the Maitreya Buddha has betrayed the Thunder Sound Temple, he still has the Thunder Sound Temple in his heart. Revered Buddha, you can't ignore his words. The Dipankara archaic Buddha advised, Revered Buddha, you still have to think about how to resolve this sudden karma. Namo Amitabha. I understand. The Mahavarokana revered Buddha nodded and raised his finger. A 5-colored crystal flew out from the Buddha lotus and landed on Zhen Kong's soul. The soul struggled unyieldingly for a while before slowly falling into the crystal. Then, it was kept by the Mahavarokana revered Buddha's lotus platform. As for the corpse, the Mahavarokana revered Buddha also kept it into his lotus platform after some consideration. Hey! Seeing that the Mahavairokkana revered Buddha had already made up his mind, the Dipankara archaic Buddha was originally very calm. However, he suddenly felt a slight change in the Thunder Sound Temple's karmic cycle. He couldn't help but look at the Mahavairokkana revered Buddha in surprise and wanted to ask about it. However, before the Dipankara archaic Buddha could speak, the Mahavairokkana revered Buddha calmly said, "Don't let others know. Silence is golden. Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha, Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha." A hint of surprise flashed across the Dipankara archaic Buddha's face. He put his palms together and chanted 3 Buddha names in a row. So that's how it is. Namo Amitabha's betrayal of the Thunder Sound Temple was something that had never happened in the pure land of ultimate bliss. However, the Thunder Sound Temple remained as silent as ever, as if it hadn't moved at all, when the Mahavairokkana revered Buddha forcefully interfered with the karmic cycle and caused the Thunder Sound Temple's Buddha lights to fall. Chunzong, who was sitting cross-legged in a dilapidated thatched cottage by the East Sea, suddenly opened his eyes. Within his clear eyes, an extremely dim Buddha light suddenly appeared. As the Buddha light flashed by, Chunzong closed his eyes as well. However, within Chunzong's Niwan Palace, boundless Buddha light appeared out of nowhere and illuminated the entire Niwan Palace. Within the Buddha light, the golden radiance that was previously hidden within Chunzong's Niwan Palace appeared with a whoosh. Within the golden radiance, the silhouette of another Buddha Lord's golden statue appeared. As soon as this golden statue appeared, it was already 9 feet tall. Moreover, below the 9 feet tall statue was a 9-grade lotus platform. Behind its head, a faint radiance flickered. These were the signs of the Buddha Lord's initial formation. Namo Amitabha. Shock appeared on Chunzong's face as he silently chanted Buddha's name in his heart. He sighed inwardly. Could it be that the message left within the golden radiance is real? However, I really don't know what exactly happened in the Thunder Sound Temple. Is this change a blessing or a tragedy? Is it a blessing or a curse? After an unknown period of time, a low voice could be heard outside the thatched cottage. "Master, I'm back." "Oh." Hearing this familiar voice, Chunzong's face lit up with joy. He hurriedly got up from the ground and walked out of the thatched cottage. Outside the cottage, the sky was bright. Zhen Kong was still standing arrogantly in the distance. However, at this moment, there was an additional layer of joy on his face from surviving a calamity. In front of him, Zhen Jie frowned and sized up Zhen Kong. He didn't allow him to approach the thatched cottage. After Zhen Jie left, Dragon Horse Zhen Feng and Zhen Han also hid far away, secretly on guard. Tai Bai Jinxing and the other people from the Immortal Palace were long gone. Clearly, they had already left when the Thunder Sound Temple's guardian king sent Zhen Kong back. "Zhen Kong, what happened in the Thunder Sound Temple?" Chunzong was somewhat anxious. He took a few steps forward and asked. Zhen Jie raised his hand and blocked Chunzong. He said, "Master, wait a moment. I keep feeling that there's something wrong with this Zhen Kong. However, I can't see anything wrong with him. Let the grass come out and take a look." "Oh, what's wrong?" Chunzong was startled. He looked at Zhen Kong and asked curiously. 2 Zhen Kongs went to the Thunder Sound Temple and 1 returned. This is naturally the real Zhen Kong. Mahavairokkana world revered Buddha is perceptive. How can he not see which one is real and which one is fake? "Eldest martial brother, don't worry," Zhen Kong said loudly. "That fake Zhen Kong was already killed by me on the spot." Zhen Kong's voice was extremely loud. It had already traveled into the thatched cottage. "Sigh, Zhen Kong." Chunzong grumbled. "Why did you break the vow to kill again?" Although that fake Zhen Kong was of the demon race and also interfered with our sutra-seeking extreme bliss, it was also a type of merit. Perhaps he deserved to die, but you didn't have the authority to kill him. Since you broke the vow to kill, wouldn't you lose merit? What I told you before, why didn't you listen to me?